What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast recap episode for this week. We're going to be talking about running a business this week. So you're going to listen to a bunch of recaps, a bunch of people talking about how they run their business, different things inside of their business. So please listen intently, take some notes, run back to the episode if you find something that strikes you that you just want to watch the full thing. We have some amazing guests with incredibly successful businesses, very insightful business acumen. So please jump back and listen to the full episode if you see something that really strikes you. But subscribe, all of that stuff. Keep listening to these recap episodes that we have for the month of December. But have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you all the next year. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am excited to talk to Carlos Rovira. Really looking forward to this conversation.
What I did was the cliche thing of read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was a book that my economics teacher in high school had recommended to us. But of course, as a high school student, you're not going to read any of the books that your teacher recommend. But for some reason, that stuck in my head, and I picked it up one day at a Barnes & Noble, and I read it. I read the entire thing, and it changed my entire mindset, like it does for most people. That leads obviously to the rabbit hole that is all the other Robert Kiyosaki books and all the other business books and the real estate books. And that's how I discovered real estate. So it's 2009, the worst of the financial, like the worst days of the financial crisis. I live in Miami, Florida, which is one of the hardest hit markets in the United States when it came to that particular crisis or recession. And I get this crazy idea to buy a duplex. I'm engaged to my now wife. And of course, what do you do when you're engaged? You look for a house, your dream home. But I got this crazy idea to buy a duplex, live on one side, rent out the other, and you not have to pay a mortgage. Of course, it's 2009. So anybody who's invested in real estate is a loser, has lost their properties, is in foreclosure, bankruptcy, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a really negative, bad perception of real estate investing. I was so clueless. I was 22 years old that I didn't even know there was a financial crisis going on. So I think that helped because the negativity, I think, was not like influencing me. So I went for it. Properties were cheap back then. The only problem is that financing was like impossible to get, but we pulled it off. I had to convince my wife. When I said, let's buy a duplex, she imagined like us living in the hood, some low income area. A duplex, but we found a property in Pinecrest, which is a very affluent neighborhood that still had some pockets of multifamily. And we found this duplex that was very nice, and we bought it. We moved into it, and she agrees, and we both agreed that was one of the best decisions we ever made, was to buy that initial property. It really helped us save money because you're not paying mortgage, right? Like I would have had to pay a regular mortgage or rent if I were living in a house, but in this situation, I had a person next door who was giving me a check every month that was basically covering the majority of my mortgage payment. I think I was out of pocket like $300 a month or something like that, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that led to us being able to save a lot of money. I kept working at Yahoo. She kept working her job. I always had some sort of side hustle. I would like make websites for people on the side. I was always coming up with ways to like make extra money because I got this taste of passive income and I wanted more of it. I just wanted to save. I wanted to buy the next property and I wanted to buy the next property. And so whatever we could do to accelerate that, we did. So I was always working, always coming up with ridiculous ways to make money. And we were able to buy our second duplex, thankfully, a couple of years later. Took a while to save up for it. And that snowball kept growing, and we just bought more properties over the course of 3-4 years. And so we had a nice little portfolio of properties. And that's when the market turned. I think it was like 2013, 14, where things just started getting really expensive again. And it was hard to find properties in Miami that would cash flow. I was big on cash flow because I entered the market in a time where people were purchasing not for cash flow, for appreciation, and then properties stopped appreciating, and then the crisis occurred. So I was very much ingrained with this, like you need to have cash flow, positive cash flow always. And that became very difficult in the Miami market to find. So one conversation led to another conversation, which led to another conversation. Long story short, I discovered the Kansas City, Missouri market, and I bought a house, a single family home there for $80,000 just to try it out. Super cheap, really relatively easy to pull off. Financed it. So I put 20 grand down or 15 grand down. And it worked out. It was a nice little rental. I bought another one. Eventually I had this nice little portfolio of single family homes. And I was trading the duplexes that I owned in Miami had appreciated so much that I would sell one duplex and I could buy 5 houses in Kansas City. So the portfolio snowballed until around the time where COVID hit, where then again, things stopped and prices got expensive. Multifamily just went crazy. And by then I had met my current partner in Kansas City. His name is Alfredo. And he and I put our heads together and we decided to start buying some bigger deals. And we pivoted into commercial. So today we own 6 buildings. They're a mix between office and retail, and all in the Kansas City market. And it basically traded up and 1031 into all these properties from my existing portfolio. Nice. Right now on the tail end of having sold all of my smaller properties, my single family homes. I have 2 left that I have to sell this year. And the focus is going to be just on commercial moving forward. It's a big boys club. It's a much smarter business than residential. It's very, very much data driven. And my engineer brain needs that. I am very non-emotional when it comes to making investment decisions. And I'm very much a numbers guy. So commercial is a numbers game, whereas residential tends to be a little bit more of an emotional game because you're buying houses. They're worth what the house next door sold. You're not able to really create value as much in the residential side than you are in the commercial world.
So I want to go into, you started off in Yahoo. How did the transition go? I don't think we really touched that. You talked about jumping into buying the duplex, which is probably like where you got that taste. How did you end up leaving Yahoo to start to do this stuff full time?
Yeah, it was hard. I had a lot of fear of giving up the paycheck. Yeah. It took me 9 years. I started working there in 2008 and I didn't leave until 2016 when my second son was born. I worked, for lack of a better term, my ass off. I mean, I was always working either at work or on whatever side hustle or trying to buy real estate. I would work on my side hustles while at work at Yahoo. And I'm a really hard worker. I could juggle multiple things. Yeah. And in 2016, it got to a point where, and my second son was about to be born. I had taken this like 8-week maternity leave that the tech companies give. And I remember I had already bought a whole bunch of houses in Kansas City and I had enough income where it just like, I was just not in a position where I needed money anymore. And I had become so exhausted that company went through so much drama. They got bought out eventually by Verizon, and then Verizon sold them to a private equity firm. There's all this crap, and the employees always take the brunt of that instability. Yeah. So I think by 2016, there was they were about to get bought out by Verizon, and then there was just so much negativity around the office and more layoffs, and it was always a layoff or like a reorganization or you have a new boss because we're changing this and we're changing that. It was just like, I was over it and just exhausted. It had been 9 years and I already had real estate income. So I took the plunge and just rode out the paternity leave and I didn't come back after.
Awesome. That's probably a very good feeling. When I was in the military, there was a buddy of mine that I was chatting with. He had, at that time, 20 houses completely paid off that were bringing him in income. And I'm in a really good position. He's, I want to stay in. I want to keep serving. I don't have to. If they give me an assignment I don't want, then I get to jump ship. And that was, for you, if you're dealing with something you don't want, you're setting yourself up for success. You don't have to quit your job to do this stuff full time. But if you do this stuff and it's bringing you the income, then you're only setting yourself up for a more solid and more favorable future for you. So it was well done on your part. So
in retrospect, I probably, shortly after I left was when the Verizon deal closed and then there was a huge layoff. And I was thinking later, like I probably could have just stayed a couple of extra months and then taken like a severance. But like I always had this thing about being laid off. Like I didn't want to be a person who got fired from a job. So I had like this pride of I left on my own terms versus being fired like every other employee who leaves that company ends up leaving on. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So how many employees do you have now, or roughly?
Yeah. Okay. So we're vertically integrated. I have 3 companies. I have RG Capital Partners, which is the Kansas City investment company. I have Rovira Capital, which is the company that we use to buy our personal rentals and stuff, just my wife and I. And then Rovira Property Management is the property management company that then manages all of the units that we own in those two entities, with those two companies. We don't have any employees, and obviously in the holding companies, the employees are all in the property management company. We have 2 employees in Kansas City. We have 1 here in Miami. And then my wife and I run the day-to-day. We're not really employees. We're just owners. Yeah. We got 3 actual full-time employees. And it's actually been enough. We make we're really scrappy. We can do a lot with very little. And I've grown. It took me really long to hire that first person. Yeah. I held out. And then the second person was like a very calculated, because it's a big expense and a big responsibility to have payroll. So I think we've done a relatively good job of growing very slow, very methodically, not without over hiring and being in over our heads.
So how much of you read a bunch of different books on managing people and like making sure you have right person, right seat, if you're like talking EOS type stuff or various different things. And I would imagine coming from your position, I'm just trying to understand your thought process behind or how you're managing employees now, coming from a spot where, the way you said incompetence and mediocrity were the norm and that kind of drove you crazy. How does that affect the way you're managing your businesses and employees now? What are your expectations and how do you make sure that you're hiring people that aren't going to be incompetent and mediocre?
Yeah, well, I guess it's a twofold question. It's how do we find the right people and how do we manage them once they're in the...
Yes. Yeah.
I always hire a recruiter. I pay money to have somebody do the interviewing for me because I am horrible at hiring. I will hire the first person that I interview because I feel bad. Like, pity. Oh, I'm going to make it work. And then I end up regretting it later. And I had my first assistant, I hired that way. I ended up having to get rid of him before a year. So I told myself, I'm never not going to hire a recruiter. It cost me $5,000 up front. And I had to stomach that, just pay the money. It is so worth it. They go through hundreds of resumes. They interview people on Zoom like idiots, like such idiots that they interview. They weed them all out. I don't have to even look at them. They send me videos of the Zoom interviews. I pick and choose the ones that I like. So I don't have that guilt. I can just like discard of people that I've never met, and it's no guilt because they have to do it. Like they have to tell the person, no, you didn't get the job. I don't have to be the one to tell the person that they didn't get the job. So it makes it really easy for me. And then they make them do like these personality assessments. Like it's very data oriented as well, and like a very thorough, like a 3-step interview process. So if a person goes through this like rigorous 3-step process, and the second step they have to fill out this huge like test. Like it's an hour and a half evaluation. If they're taking the time to get through all of that, like a lot of people drop off on the second step. They just you can fill out the thing and it's easy. Okay, fine. We're not hiring that person. If they get through that and they get through the 3 interviews, then you have a relatively high chance that they're going to be a good quality person. So we put a lot of emphasis up front on the hiring. And then once they're in, we have to just create systems. That goes back to my engineering background. It's a lot of logic. If then this, if that. We have programs like Monday.com, which is like a task management system, and so it's very transparent of what everybody's working on. And we have a weekly meeting where we go through the whole list of tasks, and we just keep everybody accountable. And you get to learn like what certain employees are stronger at and what they're weaker at, and you can help them. You can leverage what they're really good at, and then help them learn in other ways where they're weaker. Yes, it's hiring, very rigorous hiring up front. Don't get lazy on the hiring side. And then just accountability and systems and lots of communication. 99.9% of problems can just be avoided if people just communicated effectively. And
I've seen a lot of that. Yeah, awesome. So these recruiters, I'm intrigued. I'm the one who tends to do a lot of the interviews for hiring in our companies. But when the recruiter is going through, how do they process this? So what do you give them so that you get the right output back? Let's start there.
Yeah, I tell them what I want to hire. So in my case, usually property manager. And they'll have like templates of property manager job postings, and they'll send it to me, and then we edit it and we add and remove what we want. And then they'll use that and they'll post that on LinkedIn and Indeed and all the different job postings. And then as the resumes come in, they'll filter them out, and then they'll do interviews, or they'll weed out the people they don't like, and then they'll set up interviews with the ones that they do. And then whoever does show up to the interview, they'll record the interview on Zoom. And then every Friday, They send you an email with 3 or 4 of the top candidates that they thought would fit. You watch all the videos. A lot of times, like the first 2 minutes, you're like, nope, this person sucks. And you just move on. So if I like the person, then I'll respond to the recruiter and tell them, okay, yes, move them to the second phase. And then the second phase is like this hour and a half, like personality test that they have to take. And then there's a second interview where he goes over one by one every question, and the person has a chance to answer. Like the thing will spit out like an evaluation of this is the way you are. This is your personality based on how you answered. And then it'll go on to every question, and the person will have a chance to agree or disagree with the evaluation and then just give their justification. And you sit in this interview silently. I don't say anything. It's a Zoom call, and the recruiter does all the work. You just sit there.
They know you're there though?
They know you're there. Yeah. And then at the end, I'm allowed to ask just free-form questions, which I usually do. And then if they get past that, then we bring them in for an in-person interview. And it's interesting, a lot of times the people on Zoom look really good and they present themselves really good. And then when they show up to the office, there's like a weird energy, or like they're different. Like all of a sudden they show up different and they're not as good. So it's crazy how like even in person, like if you do this kind of methodically, you can weed out people even at the final step. So yeah, it works. It takes a while. It takes several months for you to get the person, so you can't be in a hurry. You have to be patient.
That was
a lot
my
of
next
times
question,
first round of interviews that they send are horrible. There's a little bit of tweaking. Like you'll respond saying, I don't like this person because of this and this. And with your feedback, they can tailor the next few interviews that they send over.
Yeah, when I was hiring my personal assistant, it was an outsourced VA out of the Philippines type of thing. And like the amount of nonsense you get in right away anyways is like the amount of like applications that clearly haven't read what you're actually looking for. Like they just shotgun out things all the time. I started using a lot of different tricks that I or tips, I should say, that I've read online, like asking them to put certain things in and do certain bits of homework. Patrick Bet-David, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's down out of Boca, but he's a big entrepreneurial type of guy, has a great podcast. But anyways, he talks about one of the things that on his second layer of an interview is having the person go and read a book and then write a book report on it and bring it back to the second interview. But one of the things in his company is they have a book of the month. Everybody in the company has to read this book every month, like every or is it quarter or a month? I don't remember. But he's, look, if you're not willing to read a book for the job, then you're not going to be willing to do some of the other stuff I'm going to ask you to do. So like the job's going to require a lot of stuff, and you're going to be required to read a book when you come in here. So I might as well make sure that it's a requirement before you even get the job. And so he said, yeah, if you don't read the book or you don't show up in the book report, then you're automatically not going to be included. It's those hurdles that really help, like you were saying, having that 3-step process. Those hurdles help make sure that you're weeding out the folks who are just looking to get a paycheck and be that mediocre person that you were talking about before, not the person who's driving forward. So yeah. What are your goals for growth right now as you're moving through? Obviously, you're looking to get rid of your last couple single-family houses. You're only focused on commercial stuff right now. What are your goals for growth, and what's your plan to get those goals accomplished?
Yeah, so I set my goal to get to 400 units. We're at about 200 today. So basically double by the end of the year. And that could be a combination of, because we do third-party management as well, that could be a combination of other clients that we manage for and then stuff that we've acquired. Obviously, I prefer that most of the V stuff will be acquired.
Yeah.
But that's the number I threw out into the universe to see what sticks or what comes back. And I'd like to buy some more commercial properties this year. It's getting tough with interest rates, and there's relative stalemate in the market. There's not a lot of supply coming out, especially in the retail side. And I've started to look more in Miami and South Florida area to see if I can buy some stuff down here. I think now there's opportunity while there's stalemate to get some creative deals done down here. Where otherwise you wouldn't be able to because there's just so much money being thrown around. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So I do a lot of like LoopNet trolling, what properties I can find, and I'll call brokers, because a lot of times brokers will have, especially commercial brokers, they'll have a lot of off-market stuff that they don't post, but then they'll use the LoopNet listing to get people to call them, right? So they'll be like, oh no, that property, but I have this one. So I try to call the brokers to just start knowing them and getting to know who they are, because I think now having broker relationships might be more important than ever, because they're going to have to start catering more towards buyers, whereas before things were just flying off the shelves, so they could just post any listing and it would sell immediately. I think brokers now are getting into a position where they're having to nurture buyers a little bit more. I'm getting a lot of callbacks from brokers where before I wouldn't even get them to answer an email. So I think we're in an interesting position where, as a buyer, if you focus on making broker connections and looking for some of the off-market deals, you might be able to. And I think into creative stuff like seller financing and lease options and stuff like that, you're more sophisticated, which in the commercial side is more common to see that sort of stuff. I think we'll be well positioned. I can't control the market, but I can control how much time I spend searching for deals and how many phone calls I make. So I'll just keep doing that until something sticks.
I'm excited to talk to another real estate guy, a dad who loves travel. Chase Calhoun, looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more.
I had a very long transition into basically the training. That's what I do now. I'm a general contractor, real estate investor. We do a ton of construction. I did not intend to go into construction in any way, kind of shape or form. I think honestly, some of that's probably my dad. I grew up around it, but my dad really wanted his kids to go to college and get a good job and that kind of thing. And looking back, I almost wish I would have just started down this path right out of high school, because I'd probably be way farther along right now. But I didn't. I went that college route and tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I've always been very entrepreneurial when I was young, from a very young age. But I really tried to go down that force, get a degree, go get a good job, try to make it to retirement. And it was like trying to squeeze a round peg into a square hole. It just didn't work for me. And so I went to college. I went through a couple really good kind of career type jobs, but just was miserable beyond belief. And then finally found a job with some kind of flexibility, but knew that I wanted to go this route. And so that's when I started transition. I started investing in buildings, what I have now, while I was still working until I was able to exit. But it's just funny because I was totally different stuff out of college. I spent some time in law enforcement, and I went into commercial insurance, doing something totally different, and just none of that stuff was really a good fit. And again, I don't know that I'd be super excited about just doing painting or just doing a certain trade and doing that kind of thing. Definitely the construction is a huge part of what I do, a huge part of why I'm successful today. So it's funny how it, in a roundabout way, ended up in the same spot.
I would have never guessed that I would be where I was at all. I did what I thought I was supposed to do, which was join the military, and I did that for quite a while. And I kept bouncing around all over the place in the military until I finally just settled into a job that forces me to bounce around anyways. When you're an entrepreneur, you're all over the daggone place doing all sorts of things and ideas all from all over the angle. So it's a blast, but and a different everyday type of stressful blast. What would you say is your biggest struggle right now in business, and what are you trying to do to overcome it, or are you running away from that fact that it's a struggle?
I think the biggest struggle I'm having right now, and not that it should necessarily be a struggle, but I think we tend to, the things that are scary sometimes are what, we struggle with the most, but just scaling. So when I started doing this, it's funny how your goals continue to go. So I started out as real estate investing because I just wanted to if I lost my job, I can basically have as much coming in from the rentals as equal to unemployment. And it's just over time, the goals or what I'm trying to do have changed quite a bit. And now I'm at a interesting point where I've started to scale a little bit, and really to go to that next level, I'm going to have to scale more. And so I think for me, it's just, I'm not running away from it, but it's a little bit scarier to scale, especially when you're committing on to bring on salaried employees that you're responsible. It's very serious to me. If I'm bringing somebody on, it's not just a job. I got somebody that's providing for their family from the somebody that we're providing them. So that's a big deal to me. And so that's something I'm dealing with right now, is just scaling the business and doing it in a way where it makes sense. It's thoughtful, but just pushing through and taking that jump, even if it seems a little bit scary.
So where are you at right now, and what are you trying to scale to?
So it's because we've got two different things going on. I've got a real estate I say small real estate investment company. It's a real estate portfolio, and they're a construction company. And they're both both at a size where I could fire everybody tomorrow and run both of them the size they are now and live a very great, comfortable life. But it's going to really limit the amount of impact that I can have on other people. And so I'm just trying to scale them both basically as big as possible, but doing it in a way like I don't want to scale. I think a lot of people get in trouble when they scale too quickly. To just set really intentional goals, like we're going to try to scale the rental portfolio and grow the units and the gross rents by this much this year. And we're going to try to scale the construction company by this much this year. And so just trying to do it in a thoughtful manner, but still also going quite a bit bigger. So like the rental portfolios look at gross rents a lot. And so I think we've averaged like over 60% growth in the gross rents of the rental portfolio over the last several years. And so it's moving at a pretty good clip. It's just getting to the point where if we continue going that route, we can bring in people to help run it and pressing them to take it over and continually run with it.
Is that 60% growth mostly from acquisitions or mostly from rent growth over the last couple of years?
It's acquisitions. And again, we're doing heavy rehab stuff. So we're buying a lot of like heavily distressed properties, taking them through a full rehab, and then the lease ups and a little bit of rent growth, but it's more just adding kind of units around the door.
Basically going from zero rent to market rent. And
Exactly.
growth is a relative term. Is that all local to you there right around where you're at in Little Rock?
Yeah. So it's all in central Arkansas right now. We may start to push that out a little bit, like outside of Little Rock and other like surrounding cities, then eventually farther. But as far as right now, it's all central Arkansas or Little Rock specifically.
And do you guys manage your own properties or do you have a third party?
We do. So we're in-house with the property management.
Nice. All right. How many units total do you have?
I think right now it's 54 units that are leased up, and then we've got about another 15 under construction as of today. And we're also needing to add through either new construction or having rehab properties on try to buy at least a couple a month or start a couple new constructions a month.
I love it. Yeah. Are those mostly single family on that or small apartment buildings, or what are you guys usually focusing on?
It's both. It's a mix. So we've got single family homes, small multifamily, so duplexes, fourplexes, and then some small apartments, a couple 12-unit apartment complexes, but nothing bigger than 12 units right now.
Awesome. What's stopping you from going any larger than that, or just haven't had the opportunity to buy them yet?
For larger apartments, you just haven't had an opportunity to buy them yet. So I would love to do some larger apartments. The last couple of years, it's just been really tough for me to find deals that made sense.
You are not cool. Yes.
A lot of the deals that have sold in the last couple of years that I've looked at sold for too much money. Now there might be some opportunity in the near future here to pick some of those up that are going to be distressed because they overpaid for them. But thank God I've been very conservative with buying stuff because I haven't had an opportunity to buy one. But if I found a good deal and we've looked at some 80s or 100 units that are distressed and need to rehab and we get them for the right price, you definitely go in and do that.
Nice. Yeah, I've been struggling with the same stuff. I've been underwriting, and I'm like, I don't know how people are paying the numbers they're paying. And I stay very strict on my numbers. They're like if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense is usually what I say. And it's been dreadful for the last couple of years. And it's funny because even in like 2021, I was saying the same thing. Like people are overpaying like crazy, and then people just continued to overpay even more. And I was like, where am I? What is happening right now? Like because I was saying in 2021, oh yeah, next year or the year after, I'll be buying up these deals that these people are underwater on. And then all of a sudden 2023 comes around and I'm still not buying deals and people are still overpaying. I was like, this is just insane. So recently I just started, I want to start looking at some of the smaller apartment buildings because I feel like there might be a little bit more room in there to get those 12, 15 units. I'd much rather, I think, chase those down, me and a partner, rather than go and do a syndication of 100 unit. I think you're on the right path, on the right track. So staying strict with those numbers and all of that. How do you operate your property management in-house? Is it you specifically, or is that do you have an employee that kind of runs that, a virtual assistant? How do you do most of that?
So as of right now, we have a full-time in-house property management employee. So that's their full-time job, is just managing that. I'm still pretty involved in it because they need help. We manage a handful of units for like outside clients. I don't know if we'll do that for a long time or just have everything, but we'll get about 80 units under management total, including those outside management ones. So it's a full-time job to them. I just recently brought on an operations manager, so a little bit higher level position that should be able to help with the property management as well, at least just as far as some of the decision making and the property management is usually the problems. There's a lot of problems that come up unexpected.
Yeah.
And just having somebody that our property management employee is great and she does a great job at it. She just needs assistance when there's problems or the weird situations that pop up to be able to make that decision. So hopefully between the two of them, I'll be able to be a little bit more hands off. I love real estate investing. I love long-term rental properties, but property management is just not something I'm super passionate about. It's definitely the hardest part of this. But having it in-house and having the control over it, I don't think we would have as much success as we do if it weren't in-house like that. There's some decent property management companies in Arkansas, but they're few and far between. And it's just having it in-house like that helped us a lot. And so at least for the near future, we'll probably continue that way.
How did you find your full-time property manager and your operations manager?
The full-time property manager, good or bad, it's actually my mother-in-law. So she spent 20 years in property management in California. So she ran an apartment complex, and it's mainly larger apartment complexes, like an on-site property manager. And so when she wanted to relocate to Little Rock as well, she stepped in and took over all that. And it's funny, man, my operations manager is he was a young guy who had moved to Little Rock. We work, and he's got a background in like heavy construction. He works for one of the larger construction companies in the U.S. as like a project manager or working up towards the superintendent path. And he was interested in real estate investing. So I actually met him like several years ago because he hit me up and wanted to ask me some questions and possibly buy like a rental property. And so I helped him actually buy a couple rental properties in Little Rock. And I know there's not too many people that I meet that are like this, but he's asking me, should I pay you guys to rehab it? And I just said, hey, just spend a little bit of time with you. I think you're definitely smart enough and have the skills to be able to like manage the rehab yourself. You just do it. And then just let me know if you have questions or refer subs or whatever. And then eventually start working part-time as a project manager while you're still working his full-time job. And it's just funny how things work. He moved a couple times for work. And fast forward just recently, he's like, man, I'm not liking what I'm doing. If there's an opportunity, I'd like to come and work for you. And that's how that one came about. So it wasn't like I was posting a job advertisement. That person came as he's just a rock star type guy, just he's a go-getter and he can do a great job at anything he does. And it definitely made sense for him to really roll. And the kind of the goal is eventually he can take more and more off my plate and run it, if you will.
Nice. Yeah. Has it felt good kind of letting some of that go over to him, or how's that transition been going with some
very new transition? So he just started on Tuesday and we've been all snowed in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
This is a brand new thing. Yeah. And even already just being able to shoot some stuff to him because he's the type of person that can handle a lot of the stuff. So I also have a full-time project manager. So I've got a construction project manager who's also rock star young guy. He doesn't have experience like with real estate investing, and he's got a lot of basic remodel project management experience, but just not as much. And having the operations guy on, just be able to start putting stuff on his plate, it's been great so far. And just I can already see how that's going to continue to grow everything and just make it a lot easier.
I would imagine it's going to help that scaling thing that you want to do a whole lot easier. I think I read in your pre-note stuff, trying to figure out the who's on who you're going to hire on different spots. This one fell in your lap, but at the same point, was it intentional? Do you think those feelers were already out there for that? Or was it literally just fell in your lap and you never even put anything out there for it?
For him, for the operations guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, we had talked about it. So it's just funny, like maybe a year and a half ago, we talked about him. He was wanting to quit his job, and we talked about him quitting and coming to work for me. But he decided to go pursue something else for a while. And I remember my wife, Brenda, was almost a little bit upset that he pursued something else instead of coming to try to work with me. And I was like, look, the timing's not right now. It's God knows better than we do. And it's just, if it's meant to be, it'll be later and we'll deal with it later. It's just funny, over the last year or so, we've been growing like crazy. And if I need the help now, and so I didn't necessarily need help then. And so I think it's just a time thing. And obviously having those feelers out, that the opportunity was there. And again, just finding that's like an A player and trying to bring that A player on to come and work with me. And then figure the rest out as we go.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am excited to have Alan Underwood on the call today.
For 13 years, I did all the bookwork, the bookkeeping, everything for our $16 million a year company. That was a lot of time spent reconciling bank accounts and doing stuff like that. And again, some of that is teaching. That's the way my dad did it. That's what, he taught me to do. So that's what I did. And then I joined GoBundance, and there's this thing about a virtual assistant from the Philippines who can do accounting or bookkeeping. And I thought, I don't have any clue what that is, but I'm going to look into it. And now I have Sess, who spends about 8 hours a month at $8 an hour and does all the book work for 10 different companies. And all the transactions, we meet maybe once a month and it's all handled. And I thought, good night, for $60 a month. My life I could have owned 2 or 3 hours, at least a week. It was probably an hour a day I could have gotten back of my time, but I just didn't know that. So I couldn't do it then. And so I'm actually in that process right now, because until we started this company, I really didn't have to be that efficient. There wasn't a lot going on, but now there is. And so as I envision things that need to get done, it's not, hey, this needs to get done, how am I going to do it? It's, this needs to get done, who is going to do it, and how do I create the system so that they have accountability and that all I have to do is like open one screen and I can look and see where they're at in the process. It's a totally different approach. And a lot of that has just come from watching other people that are doing it way better than me. And I've got a Google sheet that I keep now where I try to keep track of everything I do during the day and then identify, was that something that I had to do? Or was that something that somebody else could have done and would have freed up some time? Because where I'd like to get in my business, I love having conversations with people like what we're doing right now. I love meeting with investors. I love showing them the projects that we're doing. That's the part that lights me up. I love speaking on stages at real estate conventions and stuff like that. And so that's all I want to do. I want to focus on what I love to do, because, and here's something I truly believe, is that the one thing that everybody in this world wants is love. And if you're doing something that you love, it will attract people to you because they're attracted to love. They want love. It's not necessarily that you're awesome at what you're doing, but you love what you're doing. They can see that radiating from you and they want love. So they'll come to you. And the better I can get at just doing the things that I love, the more successful my business is going to be. And even though it's difficult for me to understand this, there's people that love bookkeeping. And if I can empower them to do what they love, they're going to have a better life, which is going to make my life better. And so that's really what I'm trying to find, is who would love to do this and how can I get them involved in doing it with me rather than me trying to do all the different things. Now, in the beginning of a business, sometimes you are doing all the things and sometimes that's the only way to learn it. But I'm really trying to be intentional about, hey, that's not my thing to do. We're going to leave that to the virtual assistant or to the accountant or whoever it is.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I wish I could remember who said this, but I was listening to a podcast and they were interviewing a Jewish guy, and he was like, hey, what is it like? All you Jewish guys have so much money. You guys are doing really well. What is it? And he's, if you've ever come to my house, you'll never see me mowing my lawn. We work together as a community. There's a guy that goes to my, parish? Or synagogue that goes to my synagogue that owns a company that mows lawns. So I hired him. And I am helping him in his expertise grow his business, and he's helping me be able to focus on what I'm doing. And we all do that with each other. Like, we focus on what our core understanding is, what our core focus is, as EOS calls it, core focus. And we just do that, and we hire other people inside of our community to do the things that we're not good at. And I was like, golly, that is such a, like, and it's very basic when you really look at it. We're like, duh, it's not like, my expertise is not out there mowing my lawn. I do a moderately okay job with it, but by the end of it, it takes me 5 hours to mow my daggum lawn. I'm covered in dirt. I've got to go take a shower. I've now lost 5 hours of my Saturday that I could have been spending time with my kids. Granted, I personally use it a lot to listen to books and whatnot, but I said, man, I could just spend the money on somebody else, help them grow their business and become a better and stronger in their business, so I can become better and stronger where I'm at. So knowing your strengths in your business and understanding what it is, and go to that who and not how. Who can I fill this position with, rather than how do I get this thing accomplished? I think it's by far the way that we should go. And I'm very guilty of not still doing that, despite the fact this is probably the 5th time I've said something like that on this podcast, and I still have yet to implement some of that stuff into my own. Sometimes I feel like I'm still at that beginning stage of, like you said, where you have to do it all, where you're having to do all of these things. So there's some stuff I've gotten rid of with assistance, but others that I haven't. How did you know when it was time to scale from I'm building this thing out? Obviously, with what you're building right now, you've got the benefit of the years of experience behind you that have told you, okay, I know how to build some of these systems now and what I'm doing. How did you get to that point where you finally said, okay, I really need to hire these things out? And how did the business look financially for you to be able to hire those things out? Because especially when you're doing a startup, it's not like the money, like there's a bunch of money already there. So how did that kind of go?
Yeah, and I'm still in the middle of that. So the business that we're creating is off to a great start, but I'm not anticipating any personal returns from that for another year. Mm-hmm. So I'm definitely very aware of the cost of hiring people. I think the difference is that after, and this is maybe backtracking a little bit to answer this question, but for the 13 years that I owned the car dealership, I worked 6 days a week. Usually that started at 4:00 in the morning, and I'd be home by earliest would be maybe 6. But usually that was 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And I was so burned out and depleted at the end of that I totally crashed. That was a huge, I think just physical, mental fatigue was a huge contributor to the challenges that I had after losing my dad and my in-laws in a 2-year period. And maybe this is out of fear, not being out of smart, but because I know how bad that can be, that there's a very real price on protecting my time. And I have to leave time for going to the gym. I have to leave time for eating good food. I have to leave time for being with my family, and that includes taking days off and going on family vacations and stuff like that. And the only way to do that is I need to hire people to help. Mm-hmm. And so I've tried to be wise with that and get the most value out of what I needed. So identifying, in this case, the bookkeeping. Okay, bookkeeping was costing me 8 hours a month. I can find someone for $8 an hour. Can I afford $60 a month? I cannot eat out 6 times, and that pays for that. So I'm willing to trade that for that. And other decisions have been more difficult because they're more a leap of faith. I've got a full-time marketing VA right now. Starting the podcast was a leap of faith because there's expenses and getting the equipment and expenses and getting the software to publish it and the people to do all the back end work so I don't have to. There's expenses involved there. And that's really been more of a shift in mindset from this is an expense to this is an investment, because I know that in order to attract the investors that I want for the current business, I have to be having conversations. There's a very real correlation between the conversations that I have with people and the amount of money that comes in invested. And so I've got to pay the price to get those investors in the door. And so that may be one shift is I'm not calculating it as an expense. And the other part is really just a lot of faith. I always said the secret to any success I've ever had was pray hard, work hard, and treat people right. And so far that formula is working. So we're just going to continue to trust it.
I like it. That's awesome. Yeah. Pray hard, work hard, to treat people is, I think that's a pretty good mantra for life. So I love it. So I want to shift a little bit. I know one of your passions for sure, not only in flying, we've already touched on that, but is the Angel Flight side of it. Tell me a little bit about Angel Flight, what it is that you do over there and how you've got involved there.
Yeah. When I only started flying a couple of years ago, and it really was doing that to find something that could help me restore happiness after the grief of losing my dad. And flying from the very first flight completely lit me up. I just could not wait to get back in the air. I felt like it changed me. And I had a really strong feeling that if this has been able to do so much good for me, there's got to be a way to use this to do good for somebody else. And so I didn't know that such a thing existed, but I just started Googling aviation charities and discovered Angel Flight West. And that's how I was introduced. What Angel Flight is and what they do is Angel Flight West is an organization that started 40 years ago. It was literally a handful of guys in a hangar in Santa Monica, California that would fly together to get $100 hamburger. And they somehow in that friendship thought, we're doing this flying and we're having a good time. Maybe there's some good that we can do with it. And that led to the idea of maybe there's people that are traveling for medical care where we could save them the time and the expense of travel. And that's where it started. And now Angel Flight West and the sister organizations that operate across the country, I'll focus on Angel Flight West because that's the one I know the data for, but we just completed our 100,000th flight this year. We've got 2,000 pilot volunteers servicing the 13 Western states. And what we do is we do non-emergency medical transportation for free. A really great example of that was my very first flight. A young man whose name is Bradley. Bradley was 15 years old when he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. His mom was a single mom and they lived 5 hours from the children's hospital. And you can imagine the position that puts her in is she's now driving 3 days a week to get her child, to get the care that he needs at the children's hospital, which means that she was leaving at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, leaving the other 2 kids at home to fend for themselves, driving to get the care that he needed and driving back. Well, she's going to be exhausted. He's not recovering the way that he could because of that. They burned through 3 cars. So it was devastating the family at every level. And then they were introduced to Angel Flight West through a social worker. My flight with Bradley was 1 hour and 15 minutes. I picked him up at the airport closest to his house, dropped him off at Deer Valley Airport in Phoenix. Another volunteer picked him up and drove him to the children's hospital. We had him back home before lunch. And none of that cost the family anything. So it's life-changing logistically for families. It's life-changing financially for families. And it provides a degree of hope that I think is the greatest asset of Angel Flight West, is the hope that you can provide for people. So we do flights for non-emergency medical. We also can do flights for family members or caregivers. So if you have a loved one who's receiving care far from home and it's difficult to travel back and forth to be with them, we can fly that family member, that caregiver as well. We do free flights for active duty and military veterans. Adam, you don't even have to be a pilot. You can get free flights. Yay. We do, in the summertime, I think every one of our pilots' favorite flights is, this is really impactful, is we do camps for kids who have life-ending or life-altering conditions. One of the really, in fact, I had a chance just a few days ago to speak to a flying club in Phoenix, and there's a man there, his name is Richard, and he's 87 years old now, but he came up to me afterwards and he says, I used to be an Angel Flight pilot, and he goes, I want to tell you about the impact that had on me. And he'd been an airline pilot, he'd been in the military, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hours flying. And these summer camps for kids, he said, we picked up this little girl who had been burned. She was missing all of her fingers and she didn't have eyelids. And when we got into the plane, she was thrilled, but then she started getting sleepy and she started nodding off. And he said that she wore contacts and she asked if he would grab the contact case because she wanted to take a nap. And I just watched his tears roll down this guy's face of explaining, of watching this little girl missing her fingers, changing her contact. And he said, of all the flying that I ever did, he goes, flying those kids so that they could meet another kid who was burned and looked like them, who was feeling like they were feeling. He goes, that was my favorite kind of flying. I'll never forget those. So we raise money to pay for the camps, and then we provide transportation to the camps. We do missions for victims of domestic violence and abuse, so we can fly them up to 1,000 miles away from whoever's hurting them. We do flights in support of other nonprofit organizations, blood and tissue donations, other disaster relief missions. With a small plane, we don't have to deal with hurricanes in Arizona, but if a hurricane rolls through Florida, it may not be possible to get a jumbo jet into the airport to deliver food and water. there's a pretty good chance that I can land my Bonanza on just about any clean road and drop off some cases of water. And so that's what we're able to do in those disaster areas, is fly in and out and either fly people out or fly supplies in. It's the only charity that I'm aware of that can boast that the charity actually gives about 4 times more than the donations it receives. Our operating budget last year was about $2 million. And our pilots donated over $8 million in like-kind donations, because our pilots pay for the fuel, they pay for the entire cost of the flight, they cover the cost of the transportation to and from the airport. Anything that's donated to Angel Flight West goes to help advertising for more flights and connecting with more families, because we think we're only serving maybe 5 or 10% of the families that we could be serving. And that's the biggest tragedy, is there's people out there who's suffering that we can relieve if we can just get the word out.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am very excited to talk to Tony Johnson.
I didn't have the drive to continue to bar. I wanted more out of life. So my brother was successful selling building materials. So I got interested in trying to pursue that. So it was in 2005 and 6, market was really booming, got into selling building materials. In doing so, learned all about estimating and different types of construction. The first company I worked at, which was called 84 Lumber. So we have a fantastic training program there to teach you all about building materials, building concepts, how you build, how you do estimation and takeoffs. It's a great company to learn. I did that. After a few years, I was noticing in that run up to the financial collapse, there were so many builders coming out of the walls that had no idea what they were doing. I was doing takeoffs for them. They didn't even know how to estimate a home, do anything with takeoff of a building, what was going into building the home. They were just guys that were able to get financing and putting an idea together. And so I was watching people make millions of dollars, and I said, why don't I do this? So that was my inclination to, let me go try and take the test and get that. So I did take the test in 2007, got my license, and then we just continued going through the collapse, watching people go out of business, building from there.
Yeah, taking the test in 2007, that had to be an interesting time to take it and then start jumping into that. How were those first couple of years as you're seeing this huge boom and growth? I'm probably seeing quite a few of those people you just mentioned not really knowing what they were doing, completely falling apart. How did that work for you, especially being brand new as a collapse was happening? Was that difficult for your business? Were people like, hey, man, like this is all going to hell in a handbasket. I'm not sure I want to put my eggs in some guy's basket who's only had his license for a year. How'd that go for you at the beginning?
So it was difficult for sure. So you had to learn. So I was able to adapt really quickly. So how I began, right when I began, I got my license, right? You can't get barely any work. So I got very small jobs in the very beginning. I was able to get my foot in doing tiny jobs. No one wanted. I remember trying to get larger jobs. And the first, as I got really ramping up, we got a couple jobs from people I knew, obviously friends and family, not me family, but friends in the beginning. I got a couple small jobs, but they weren't much. But anything seemed like something great. And then we started trying to find avenues for consistent repeat business. Being in sales, my goal was to find repeat customers, way to have consistent business, just like with anything. So you want to find clients that are constantly doing things. So in order, my plan was find government opportunities because they're constantly churning out new projects. So I went after HUD, housing projects. They had a lead-based paint initiative going. So we went after that. Then colleges, school systems for tiny jobs. So I would contact every maintenance department and say, do you guys have any small jobs I can bid on? Go to every shopping center, talk to the construction managers, ask what I could do to get my foot in the door. That was my plan. Some county jobs had public bid offerings. When I got my license and began in 2007, I would go to these bid offerings and there was no one there. By 2008, the collapse had started and you couldn't even get in the parking lot. There were so many people at these bid opportunities because there was no other work. So I would go to a bid that was maybe a $200,000 job and there would be 100 people in the room for the pre-bid meeting for one person to win. And probably 6 months later, I went to bids for about 3 people. All these other contractors had gone out of business. These people fell so fast. I was still doing sales. Builders were building homes and taking all the profits before they sold the homes and putting those as down payments for the next home, then upping the loan. They were over 100% financed on every property, expecting this to go on forever. And that was the same thing over and over again. And watching all these people that were so wealthy and that I had looked up to, I was aspiring to be, all go belly up, it really grounded me from the very beginning to say, hey, you've got to be prepared for this to happen again at any time. You can never put your feet too far out in front of your skis. Don't get crazy. It's a long game. You want to grow at a slow, consistent pace, and you don't put yourself comparable against anybody else. And as I've been in business all these years, I've watched plenty of people come up, get equal, then go past me, and then crash and burn. Go up, past me, crash and burn. In business, it's a long game, just like real estate. It's a marathon. Stay at your own pace. You don't want to compare yourself to others. Be as successful as you can be and set your goals for yourself. Don't let yourself get comparing yourself against other people, because I still catch myself being upset when I see someone new come in and then they skyrocket past me. And then, but after 6, 12 months of them going past me, all the complaints. The complaints first start from clients calling me, can you rescue me from this guy's job? Can you fix this? This guy messed up. I don't want to use this guy again. He's terrible. Then they crash and burn, and I'm still there. So that's been my motto. And I am trying to scale now and get bigger, but at my own pace.
So I know this is a bit of a talk that has been going around a lot anyways. I'm just curious your thought. Having started in 2007, do you feel any similarities to what we're seeing now? Now, granted, this is going to come out probably 4 months from now by the time we're done recording this and getting it all out. But do you feel anything that's similar now that you did in 2007 when you were starting?
No, this is different. This would be more like 74 to 80. There was an abundance of developed land sitting out there ready to be built on, and the financing just wasn't there. The demand wasn't there. There were vacancies everywhere. I picked up property 2010 and 11 that was pennies on the dollar. I mean, they couldn't give it away on the foreclosure steps. So that situation was overdevelopment, a false sense of demand, and the loan structuring for people that didn't deserve homes.
Yeah.
It was a bond trading thing where everything was a mess. Different regulations are protective of that reoccurring. And it's really not comparable. The main reason it's not comparable is because there was excess inventory everywhere. Right now, there's a shortage of inventory. And with this inflation, so you're not going to see a crash in values because it would never happen. There's lack of supply for the crash to happen. So what we're seeing right now is there's a slowdown in development, and that's only going to make this worse and create more supply problems. And so the values are going to continue to go up, not down, because there's no supply. With banks tightening a little bit and the rates up, it's slowing development because development, a lot of it doesn't pencil. So you have to charge high rates above the market. It just makes a lot of things not make sense. So I think we're going to hit more of a stagflation, and you might see a revamp of inflation is what you might see. I don't think that there are going to be a lot of big winners coming up ahead. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that'll go out of business. I still think this is a great time for growth of a company if you do it the right way and you go by the right approach. I think there's plenty of opportunity in this market. And I think this is going to be some once in a lifetime opportunities for real estate with the availability of office in certain sectors. I still think that's got a lot of demand that'll come back. I'm definitely interested in real estate right now. If you get the land right for development, there's a lot of money to be made. There'll be a lot of millionaires coming out of this thing. That's for sure. A lot of people will go out of business too, but if people play their cards right, there's a lot of money to be made. Quick downturn that we're going through, maybe another year or two.
You have a goal of $400 million in annual revenue by 2032. I'd love to hear your thoughts on those types of goals. I'll pause there. Take it from there.
Being in business since 2007, I have grown on average 15 to 25% every year. A year and a half ago, almost 2 years, picked up traction, started working EOS within my company, self-implemented EOS, hired a business coach, Greg Dickerson, and started working more on my business than in my business and finding I need to delegate this, delegate that. And I had been one growing unable to let go of certain facets of my business. The mentality of I can do it better than anybody else. And so that limited my growth, and I'm very good on writing goals and achieving the goals that I write. And so me doing that, and unable to let go of portions and not knowing how to systemize, because I never worked for some big GC that would say, here's all the systems. I learned everything on my own just from reading. Once I started to implement that, I started to see more opportunity. My business coach opened my mind. I need an admin assistant, a business development guy, and an estimator. Once I got admin assistant, I was amazed how much more I was being able to churn out just from doing that. Then I got one of my guys that was in the field, and I was like, listen, I think you'd be great at estimating and sales. Got a business development guy. And now at this point, we were able to write our scorecards and hone in on that and do implementing all this EOS. And I added different facets. Now I've added strategic coach. Then I added joining GoBundance, networking more, and doing a bunch of different things. Opened up a ton of different avenues as I was going through. And as I started to expand my mind into all that, my goals started to expand. I was at around the 11 or 12 million annual mark. Last year, we contracted the year before about 12 million and built out 10 million. This past year, we contracted out 23 million, built out 16 million. We're on pace to contract out 40 million, which is our goal for this year, and bill out 25 million. So all of this from me building structure, building out my team, future thinking my team, what are my needs? What are these people's accountability? So now I've more pivoted to working in my business, to working on my business in the past year and a half, which has really allowed me to step back and utilize my real abilities, and instead of trying to do things that I'm really not great at. And so it has compounded growth. I still feel it's at a steady pace, just a much greater pace, even though it's steady. To me, I don't feel like I'm out of my element, or I don't feel like I'm stretching myself, because I'm prepared in what staff do I need to properly staff up and not just contract a bunch of jobs I can't perform.
No, I love that. We implemented EOS in our company. We focus on your core and how you need to do things, and looking at something like a who, not how type of book and figuring out, okay, who can I put in these spots? And one thing that I learned I think it was on my podcast, I was interviewing somebody talking about, because letting go is very difficult. Even if you're in the process of trying to let some of that go, doing like a 10, 80, 10 concept where you start the first 10%, let them run with the next 80%, and then you finish the last 10%, just to helps you feel a little bit engaged as you're on your way out of doing it. But if you stop after that and say, now I can give you 100%, you can do what you need and I can focus on working on the business, it makes a huge difference in your ability to stay focused. Greg Dickerson, if I recall correctly, I feel like I talked to him maybe 5 years ago or something. He's a Navy vet, done a bunch of different businesses, if I recall correctly. So I would imagine he's been a phenomenal coach for you.
Yeah.
What, you had a business coach before, or was he the first one you hired?
I listened to him on YouTube for a while and hired him. And I would say I've actually not utilized him to the full potential. He simplified things so quickly, I haven't had to bother him. He started a weekly mastermind, exited it, and I continued it. Now I run his weekly mastermind. I host the call every Wednesday. Great group of guys. We stay connected and do events like other groups. But that one has been great because that's a bunch of developers. So for me, it's been great to communicate with people. We keep each other motivated. Like with GoBundance, I have a GoPod. We keep each other motivated, hold each other accountable. These things work to keep you motivated, keep you engaged, and make sure my habits are staying steady and forming, which has really impacted me, is creating consistent habits and then being held accountable in all these different groups. Someone that is very ADD, it's hard to stay consistent. So you jump from thing to thing. That's just how the brain works. When you're that type of a person, I got into the habit through strategic coach that you take all these cognitive tests. So then you start to understand yourselves better. So then I got into the rabbit hole of that. Part of my business now, we joined a company called Culture Index. And that's cognitive testing for hiring the right people and then putting the right people in the right seats so they can succeed. Going back to your point of being able to train people in good fashion and then letting them go on their own. Even if they do 80% as good as I'm going to do, it's better than me and frees up my time.
Oh, for sure.
Find those people and get my company on the path that I want to help it grow. So my employees have upward mobility and the ability to grow financially, personally, in business. And that's really my long-term goal, is to give back to charities and to grow. So my guys that are all working for me have the ability to achieve their goals and dreams.
Yeah, and that culture index, I've heard amazing things about. And Dave Aheimer's a good buddy of mine running the culture index side of the house. I think he was on like episode 3 or something like that of this podcast. But how has that been going for you? What have you thought about culture index? What have you thought about that? How has that process been for you?
We have a different guy named Kerry Friedman who is fantastic. It's just a tool in your tool belt. Everything's a tool in the tool belt. So I hooked up doing playbooks, videos of myself doing things so I can do it a couple of times. I put it in a playbook in a folder, and then somebody wants to learn how to do something, I tell them to watch my videos, and they can go learn. I like to sit and show them. Things like that. You pick up different things from different people, implement them all together. With the EOS, I use this 90IO, which is a way to organize that and keep that structured. The culture index has been invaluable. I hired some bad hires. So the guy, when I was going through my early on assessment, he identified 2 people within my company of 18 and said, this guy, you need to really watch. He should be watched at all times. He shouldn't be on his own. He was someone that we had been identifying as somebody that's probably not fitting the culture long term. We need to let go. This guy called it just from his quick evaluation.
Yeah.
He said, another guy, he said, this guy's never going to stay here with you. His chart means he will never be satisfied. He's not detail oriented, high risk to leave. Within a month, the guy we were planning on quitting took a different job, left, even though we were firing him in a month. The other guy, the newer hire, was a great fit, but went right on his own and shifted out. I saw the writing on the wall at that. I was like, my goodness, if this guy can call this, just looking at this has to be something that I can pull.
Yeah, for sure.
You have so much time and effort invested into pulling someone in a company, training them, getting them up to speed. And then when they leave, you have to start all over. And that just puts a huge burden on your ability to grow and scale. So if I can hedge that by identifying these people's traits and make sure that they fit into the seat that I'm putting them in, and they're going to be satisfied and they're going to thrive, man, that really helps me be able to meet my goals to achieve long-term success.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. I am super excited to talk to Maddie Aitchison on the podcast today.
I was passionate about this idea of being my own boss, having this life of freedom, making a difference in other people's lives through whatever space I got into. And there was one box that I really wanted to make sure was being checked in whatever career or path I decided to pursue after college, which was being able to build wealth. And as I was going through all the different industries and interviewing with this expensive piece of paper that ultimately was only getting me $35,000, $40,000 a year opportunities, I landed on a Craigslist ad. This was back in 2010 when foreclosures were everywhere in Sacramento. Real estate mentor seeks real estate mentee. I called this guy. Long story short, I ended up working for him for a year for free. He was clipping $50,000 checks on all the houses that essentially I was project managing and flipping for him. But I learned through proximity that I could do this too, which led me to my first flip at 21. I netted $106,000 on that flip. And that really was my light bulb moment of going, I can use other people's money. I can use my skill set of finding deals, building relationships, creating opportunity. And I went on to flip a couple hundred houses, built up a real estate team, realized that being in traditional real estate was not where I was passionate at, nor was it actually aligned with my kind of financial and wealth building goals. And that led me to going full-time in real estate investing, which then led me into commercial real estate, where I've been buying medical plazas, retail strip centers. And then about 6 years ago, I bought my first hotel, bought my second, bought my third. I recently just exited those hotels and sold my company last year, which was a pretty exciting milestone. And obviously the most important piece of all of this is making sure that I was being a present dad and creating a life and leading a life by example that I wanted to model for my kids, and obviously leading a marriage that I wanted to model for my kids and what a healthy relationship looked like, and also having a whole hell of a lot of fun while we do it. So we like to work hard, play hard, find as much balance or counterbalance in that as possible. But full-time real estate investor, And then obviously I have a podcast that I've been doing for 9+ years, Millionaire Mindcast, which has been as high as top 25 in the podcasting charts. We're anywhere from top 100 to 200 in terms of investing in business podcasts, and just really passionate about talking about how to be as purposeful and intentional. And as many of the people in GoAbundance say, being a millionaire in all areas of your life, not just in your bank account. And that's something that I try and not just be a messenger who talks about those things, but tries to authentically live that message and be the best case study and example of the things that you hear coming out of my mouth.
So tell me about I want to shift gears a tiny bit over to like the hotels. Like you just exited the hotels. What was it like? What was the process like? And why did you choose buying hotels? And then how did the exit process go for that? Because that's pretty exciting. So first off, congratulations on the exit, because that's really cool. But walk me through that process of what that looked like for you.
Man, I bought my first hotel on accident, if I'm being totally honest. I had an Instagram follower bring me an off-market hotel lead through a church that owned this little boutique hotel up in Tahoe that was running it into the ground. And I was like, sure, man, I can buy and flip a hotel, no problem. And obviously that was mistake number one of thinking that hotels are just like managing and operating traditional real estate assets. It is a living, breathing organism. It's a true business with inside of a real estate asset. And I learned that the hard way. That being said, it was one of the greatest experiences for me. It really forced me to lean in and build a real business, not just own and operate real estate assets, but to really run a real business. We had 40+ employees across 3 hotels, remodeled, rebranded, relaunched all of them, stabilized all the assets to force as much value into those assets in the business and the brand itself. All of them were under a parent brand. And then it was one of those things where I could have, when I got to the 3 hotels, I would have either had to have kept scaling in that market, or I could have taken the chips off of the table and used a lot of that equity to go into something bigger. And that ultimately to me was what made the most sense. It was tough to close that chapter, but I'm also a big believer in not staying anywhere longer than you feel like you're meant to be there. And there's plenty of arguments and reasons for why I could have stayed in it and continued to scale in that market. And there was more upside to be captured. And at the same time, I felt compelled to mitigate some of my risk and downside. I saw a significant amount of money beyond what I had ever envisioned having for myself at the age of 35. And also, it was a good time to reset the table. I'm not a big believer in timing the market, but I also know that things were softening up a little bit. Cap rates were expanding, certain revenues and occupancy levels were starting to plateau. And I had a good opportunity right in front of me. I decided to exit, and I think that there's going to be some great opportunity here in the next 12 to 36 months in commercial real estate. And that's what I'm gearing up for in this next tranche of opportunity, is being ready, capable, and equipped to go after that and use a lot of the learning lessons and experiences. And it was also too closing out some investments and going full circle on them. There's something that's empowering to adding that to your resume and to really crushing it on performance returns. And to me, I didn't want to get greedy. And so I decided to exit, and I'm excited for the next chapter.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have looked at like the boutique hotel thing, but it because it is that business inside of real estate, it's one of those that I'm like, I don't know.
It's brutal.
Another business. Like,
it's brutal.
You know, man.
24/7, 365. It's a living, breathing organism. You got people inside your asset all day, every day, not just customers, but staff. So there's a lot that goes into it. Then obviously you start stacking multiple hotels, multiple properties. It can get really fun. It can get really sexy. But man, this is a big part of why was this rang and buzzed 24/7, 365. And it got to a point where I felt like it was taking away from my ability to be as present as I wanted to be with my kids. And again, it came back to, is more money more important to me, or being present and purposeful and connected to my kids and my family when I say I'm going to be more important? And so it has been such a relief to almost not knowing what to do with myself sometimes, that my phone's not ringing as much. But man, it's been such a beautiful, and just so many peaks and valleys when you're selling a business. Just so many highs and lows, so many high stress moments, so many there's no way this is going to happen and get across the finish line moments. And yet it did. So I learned a ton in that experience, and I felt that was a good time to close that chapter and start retooling what the next one looked like.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. Now you said a minute ago, don't stay anywhere longer than you're meant to be there. How, in this scenario, it sounded like it was pretty obvious, like your phone was blowing up like crazy. You had already done the rehab, the refresh. In other scenarios, and maybe even in this one, was there a time early before all of that kind of smacked you in the face? How do you really know when you are not meant to be there anymore? What have been the clues in your life that you're like, okay, it's time for me to hang this particular venture up?
Yeah, honestly, it's this. It's my 5-year vision. I recalibrate my 5-year vision every single year. And I don't know. When I look at my definition of success, it's not a net worth number. It's not being a billionaire. It's not how much cash flow I have coming in every single month. My definition of success, because if that really was my definition of success, I would have made a lot of different decisions. I would have said no to a lot of certain things. I would have just stayed in my lane and done something for 30 years and let those results compound. And that probably would have equated to some great financial success and abundance. But when I really think about my own definition of success, and I know it's different for everybody, mine is I want to get to my deathbed and I want to, if I metaphorically watched a TV that replayed my entire life, I want to look at that video and I want to get to the end when the credits are playing and go, damn, that was a hell of a ride. And that is my definition of success. And so the second I feel like something is no longer aligned with my 5-year vision or aligned with that definition of success, I ruthlessly cut it. Truly, now, of course, I do it with integrity. I do it ethically. Right. I make sure that I'm not burning bridges. My reputation is extremely important to me. I respect and honor every person I do business with or even come in contact with. That being said, there is a level of what I call strategic selfishness that I know that so many people make decisions based on what other people say or think or historically or socially say you should or shouldn't do. And I'm just not one of those people. I've decided through my personal development work, you would ask the 19-year-old me, I would have say that's me. The person that I become on this journey of personal development has said, I need to strategically be selfish and go after unlocking my own goals and dreams and not do it the way I think somebody tells me I need to do it. Because there's so many, you could go on Instagram or TikTok or any of these social platforms right now and hear a million things that says, don't do all these extra things, don't get distracted, right? Go a mile deep and an inch wide. And there's been a lot of things that I've done that are literally the complete opposite of that. And they've led me to where I'm at today. And I have, in my own definition of success, unlocked a lot of richness and wealth in terms of happiness and fulfillment and also some financial abundance along the way that I probably wouldn't have if I would have just stayed doing the same little thing because I felt like I had to keep doing it because I was already here. And for me, again, I just didn't want to live a life of any regrets. And so I have been somebody that is very open and adaptive and willing to change and pivot and to embark on new journeys. And that's been something that I think has tied into a lot of the decisions I've made in my business career. David Osborne said this to me one time, and it makes me think of asking the same question in the capacity that you just noted on. He said, if I were to come into your business and follow you around as the CEO of your company, would I promote you, demote you, or fire you? And it got me thinking in terms of self-assessment. I think the same thing in the context of what you just said as being the CEO of your family, of your household, as a husband, as a father. If somebody else were to come in and follow you around on a daily or weekly basis and all the things that you say versus what's actually going on, if they were to follow you around, would you be promoted, demoted, or fired? And if you're getting demoted or fired, there might be some self-reflection and some assessment on maybe where you can step up and lead at a much higher level. Because if that is naturally what your answer is, then I think there's some honest opportunity for growth there. I can honestly say, and I say this as humbly as I possibly can, I'd get promoted. I'm killing it as a dad. I'm really killing it as a husband. And a lot of people go, and like, that must be really hard. I think what I have found is when you want to be great at something and you're willing to put in the work, you'll be great at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to be so great at those two things more than I'm willing to be mediocre, that I just find a way to consistently show up as that. And that's not just to say I'm better than anybody. That's just in my capacity and what I measure myself up against as being a successful, present, purposeful, connected, caring, loving, kind dad or husband. I am consistently showing up as that, and I've got ways that I score and reflect, and obviously those frameworks that we talked about that give me the ability to have a personal scorecard and also a peer scorecard, because it's not always good to grade your own homework. You got to have somebody else grading you as well. And so those are those feedback frameworks that keep me honest with myself.
Yeah, I'd love to figure out a way, because I think I would get promoted as a dad too. Like I think I'm killing it over here.
Yeah,
not every day. I still
me too.
We're all fall down and skin our knee once in a while, but
no doubt.
But I absolutely love being a dad. And if I could figure out a way how to make money just being a dad, dude, I would totally do that. Like,
practice.
I love it.
I told my wife, man, I'm like, babe, can you, because my wife's an author too, I'm like, can you just hurry up and just become a New York Times bestselling author and just retire me so I can be a stay-at-home dad? Because I'm like, I'll be a good stay-at-home dad. Trust me.
I am excited to chat with Harvey Yergin today. What does a day-to-day life look like for you as an implementer?
Yeah, so I'm in the beginning stages of building my practice, because I've only been certified by EOS since last August or so. So I'm building up a client base. A lot of my day in and day out now is just having conversations with people, trying to put value out, help people, talk to people with businesses. And I like that anyway. And if it turns into somebody who's interested in my services, great. If it doesn't, I just like making connections and helping people. So there's a big portion of that's happening right now. And then if I'm not doing that, I'm in session. And in session means you've done EOS 6, 7, 8 hours in a room together with a leadership team, and we're getting into it. We're really getting into it, fundamentally changing the way they do business, all in the name of helping them run a better business so they can lead a better life. And it's awesome. And all of my clients are across the country, so there's a good bit of travel in there, more travel than I've ever done in my entire life. So every session is usually a travel day on the front end and a travel day on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the gist of it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we've done all of ours. So all the leadership, everybody's in the different states other than two of us. We're both in Florida.
Okay.
So we've been doing Zoom for those, and it's dreadful. I would so much rather be in person. Just that ability to communicate in person is so much better.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I won't do it virtually. I have one client that I'm doing it virtually, but I won't. Otherwise, I won't do it.
Yeah, it's tough. Our implementer is the same way. I don't like doing them virtually, but I will if I have to. And a team like ours, there's no way to every quarter have everybody fly into one place and try to get it all. Where do we fly into, and how do we set it up? And there's no office, and there's it's a pain.
Yeah, sure.
What should a business be looking for? Let's say somebody wants to reach out to you and say, hey, what could Harvey do for me in my business? What kind of business should be looking at EOS, and what kind of businesses specifically do you like to work with?
The EOS target market is defined by companies that have between 10 and 250 employees and have between 2 and 50 million in revenue. So at least 2 million in revenue. Mm-hmm. Privately held. So EOS is tough in huge corporations that are publicly traded for reasons that I'm sure you can understand. And then, so that's demographic. Psychographically, entrepreneurial in nature, which means that they are open and honest. They're growth oriented and growth minded. They're more afraid of the status quo than they are of change. So they're looking to change. They're looking to grow. They're not afraid of shaking things up for the sake of where they want to go long term. So target market wise, that's where we shoot for. Now, most of the businesses I work with, they're smaller than that, and it works. I run EOS in my business, and I'm one person. The tools, they just work, but that is the target market. Who do I like working with? I really like working with GoBundance dudes. And one of the reasons, as I'm sure you can identify with, there just seems to be an automatic base level value share in the way that we approach life, in the way that we approach team, and the way that we think about our priorities and our families. So that's really nice. And plus we already have a shared camaraderie when we go into it.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to be in GoBundance. I prefer to work with people who have that GoBundance mindset.
Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense to me. And I think that helps you with that. Hey, GoBundance guys, most of them are entrepreneurs to begin with. So that thought process is already there. That mindset's already there to grow and build. When you were doing do you still do real estate as well as being an implementer?
Passively as I can.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. In fact, we were just talking about going to the GoBundance event in Vermont, and one of the ahas I took away from that was I'm not good at putting together real estate deals, and I'm not good at operating them, and it just stresses me out, and it's a distraction from what I'm supposed to be doing in this world. And so it took me a while to just say it. I'm not going to do it anymore. I understand I want real estate, but I want it as passively as I possibly can to avoid all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. Especially when you look at how EOS works and the things that, like, what's your core focus? And if you can apply that in your personal life on what is my core focus and what I'm doing.
Yes.
And stop chasing all the yellow butterflies that come around, because man, oh man, it gets real difficult. Like last year, we did a ton of work on the core focus. We shut down like 3 extra superfluous companies that we shouldn't have been trying to operate. Awesome. We really just narrowed down on exactly what we're supposed to be doing in the company. It made a massively huge difference in just our ability to focus, our ability to narrow in what we need to do, have the right people in the right seats. Because when you have one person in 4 different seats because there's 4 different companies that you're running,
yes,
that's nearly impossible to get the actual functionality out of that. And it was just exhausting.
Good for you. And your implementer sounds good too, because that's hard. Coming up with the core focus by itself, writing the words down, maybe isn't the most difficult thing. But the whole point of the core focus is to filter every single decision that you make in the business through it. And a lot of those decisions can be difficult. So congratulations for filtering through your core focus and making those tough decisions, because not everybody gets to that point.
Yeah, it was not easy, for sure. There was one company we spent over $100,000 trying to build it. And it was basically started and we were like, it's time for it to go. And it was, what a kick in the shin, right? It really sucked. But what have you seen both in your pre-implementer standing and since you've been an implementer in some of the biggest changes and the biggest ahas that people running companies have?
It's all one big aha. A big aha normally is just that light bulb moment. I had one recently where we were like, literally the guy's eyes got big. He said, I'm the problem, aren't I? Yep. You are the problem. That's okay. That's a good place to be, to realize that you are the problem. Now, what are we going to do about it? So that's a big one. And most of the time it's an owner who's sitting in the integrator seat and they just suck at it. There's conversations they're avoiding. There's people's feelings that they can sense, but they don't really want to touch it. They're just throwing people where it makes sense for the day. And it's a mess, and they can't figure out why nothing's happening, why we're not moving forward, why no one's hitting their goals, why no one seems to be caring as much as I do, because you're not the person for the seat. So that's a big one. I think it is just the biggest ahas come from a level of clarity, and a lot of ahas come from doing the accountability chart exercise where you start, it's really where you start to put things in their place, and you start to see before an accountability chart, the body of work just looks like a rubber band ball, right? There's no real definition of who owns what or what communication lines go where. But it feels heavy and it feels huge and it feels unravelable. No, wait, you can't unravel it. Yeah, like it's impossible to unravel. Yeah. But then you go through this exercise and you have them zoom out and you do structure first, people second. So instantly they're removing themselves, their egos, and the personnel that are involved in their business right now, which that's where the complexity comes from. You're thinking about personalities and names and skill sets and feelings and emotions and other people's egos. And if you can get to a mindset where you're removing that and you're just thinking about structure, it tends to simplify that process. And then you start to see where work and communication is actually compartmentalized and flows. And you're like, whoa, I'm in 4 seats and Johnny's in 6 seats.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder it feels like this. And there's many exercises in that process where you get that level of clarity as to almost a peek under the hood of your own business and the accountability chart. That's one of the places during implementation where they get that level of clarity.
What are you looking forward to for this year for the business?
Yeah, just continuing to grow my client base. So I have goals around the number of focus days that I want to do, and that is the first day with a client. So it looks and feels a lot like how many clients I want to have. And I'm at 10. I'm trying to get to 14 by the end of the year, so nothing crazy. And that is what I'm excited for because, man, I love being in session, and man, I love the impact that especially focus day has on a business and the people inside of it. It's very satisfying work. And yeah, my goals are all around, besides the stuff I have with my family, my parents, etc. My goals are all around growing that practice.
That's awesome. You're at the beginning stages of growing it, so I would imagine your goals are definitely to push this thing and grow it as much as possible. But that's awesome. Hopefully, I know that you're going to accomplish that because you have it written down. It's going to happen. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Thank you so very much for coming in to listen, and I'm really excited to have Daniel Ramsey on the podcast today. Talk to me a bit about the business side. You said you started at 2003. You started this. Was that the MVP for My Outdesk was in 2003?
No, what happened was I bought a house and the real estate agent was a complete, I don't want to say a bad word, but he just wasn't a great human. And I had no idea what I was doing. And after the transaction, I looked at the closing statements and the things. I was like, I can do his job. Like, he didn't do anything special. He showed me a couple houses and then at the end said, which one do you want, Daniel? And I was like, the one green carpets. And like literally like the one with the green carpets and the popcorn ceiling, like I'll take that one. I can fix this up and I hopefully make some money. He showed me these properties. I bought them. I realized how much he made. And I was like, it takes me half a year to make what he made in a weekend. I think I can do that job. So I started a brokerage, never worked for anybody, got a mortgage license, got a contractor's license. I've developed a lot of property in Sacramento, flipped a ton of property, bought and sold, helped others buy and sell. And I just learned how to do business in the real estate world. And then I needed leverage in 2007 because the Great Recession was happening. And I hired my first virtual assistant in the Philippines, and it was a fantastic move. She was a rock star. In fact, she's coming to California this Sunday to participate in our company's kind of Christmas dinner. The first person I ever hired in 2007, a long time ago now. I was like trying to do the math. Is that 15 years ago, 16? I don't know.
16?
Yeah. So we hired virtual assistants. This was before the 4-hour work week. It was before everything. Nowadays they're very, but back then I would go and travel and speak on stage, and they're like, hey, Daniel, great presentation, but can you tell me what a virtual assistant is? Like, they just didn't know what that.
Yeah.
I miss that.
Yeah.
We basically built the market for virtual assistants. Like, it didn't exist prior to us. You couldn't hire them. Upwork wasn't a thing. Odesk wasn't a thing. Like, it was just nobody had them. So we built the market in the real estate world, spread out. We do healthcare, banking, tech, all kinds of different contractors. We help people get leverage and fast. That's one of our coolest things is if you were thinking about making a plan for 2024 and you realize you need support, like we get you 100 people in 2 months, which is in our space. We do that. And then I've just slowly built, we have a technology company, a real estate company, a mortgage. We did mortgage for a long time. Then California changed the rules around it. So I was like, I'm out. I don't want to do it anymore. Actually, Wells Fargo made us change a toilet seat on a house. It was like 2011 or 12 or 13. The rules were changing. And there was a crack on the toilet seat in one of the mortgages that I was refinancing. It was an investor loan that was like a $300,000 loan. And there was tons of equity in it. And yeah, I think it was worth like $600,000. And we were doing a $300,000 loan. And Wells Fargo underwriter said, you have to change the toilet seat. And I was like, I don't change toilet seats. I own a business. What are you talking about? And so
that's hilarious.
That was my last mortgage I ever did. I was like, I'm out of this game. These people are being ridiculous. Today, we have a leadership team, run a family. I try to stay healthy and active and just try to contribute and give back to the world.
That's awesome. Yeah, the 2,500 employees, obviously a lot of that is your virtual assistants. You manage all of those. So are all of those employees then underneath they're your employees and then you 1099 them out to somebody else? Or how does your relationship work with your VAs or for the company?
Yeah, so we're a company here in the US. So we employ people in the US, and then we're a company over in the Philippines, and we take care of people over in the Philippines, but we give them healthcare, vacation time, benefits. The idea is we're a staffing company. It's a very simple model to follow. We look for long-term relationships. That I was just talking to somebody who's in Philly actually last night. He's a friend. He was like, hey, I think we need a couple people for our property management. And he's been with us like 5-6 years. He's got 2 in his real estate development that just keep doing the job. And so he's like, I think we need more. Great, let's talk. So we just look for those business owners who have a long-term mindset and really care about taking care of their people. And those, we do really well with those kind of clients. For me, I'm not focused on the scoreboard, which is the dollars bank or the net worth or the revenue or the profits, or I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on the journey and the impact that we would make. Right now we're at 2,400 people. On average, our people have 5 family members. So we're literally putting food on the table for like almost 15,000 people, which is nuts. And when we get to 5, it's going to be like 40 or 50,000. So number one, I really enjoy the fight of growing a business, because what has to happen personally in your own world is you have to self-develop. Like I couldn't lead the people that are on my leadership team if I wasn't Daniel 3.0. Like Daniel 2.0 screwed it all up. And I'm hopeful that Daniel 4.0 or 5.0 can see my kids go off into the world and be great contributors to society. And maybe I'll hit those revenue goals as a business owner and those impact goals. But this game of entrepreneurship, I think you can have it all. I think you can, and I know you can, because I feel like I do. I have a great family. I have a great business. I have plenty of time to work out. The one area that I wish I had more of was leverage. And you're an entrepreneur and you're not saying that. If you're a CEO of a company and you don't say that, then you're just not freaking in the game. Yeah. It's like saying, I've never lost money in real estate. And I'm like, okay, then you just must not be playing the game. Because Robert Kiyosaki at a conference, a GoBundance conference long time ago, like 2014 or 15, said that on stage. I was like, that guy's a liar. Like, never lost money. Congratulations. Yeah. You can just be playing the game like the rest of us.
That's funny. Yeah. Because I've heard him say that a few times, and I don't know, I wonder, it's got to be like some sort of mental gymnastics he's doing to play that, because there's net, I didn't lose money, so because my other property paid for, okay, great, but one deal, you had to have at least had a deal that has gone south. Like, it's bound to have happened. So
if you're in the real estate game, you've lost money, and that's why you make a lot of money, because you make a mistake, you lose money, and then you don't make those same mistakes. I mean, the zero game, it's leverage. It's like people. You need people, you need systems and process, and you need some great vision. You need to know exactly where you're going and then hold people to those standards of getting there. I need leverage because I'm a freaking CEO. If I'm a CEO, I'd be saying I need capital, or I'd be saying I need a great partnership or whatever.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am actually very excited to talk to Josh Notes. So with your business, let's talk about your current business and what you're doing. And then how did you get started as a fractional CFO? Where'd that come from?
It came out of the fire of a bankruptcy. So this is a good story. So started right after that real estate venture where we left off. I started an energy efficiency business, right? Not much of a business plan. Had 2 other business partners that I pulled in from the real estate ventures. One of them was Matei, the Donut King. And we started this company called Renew It in 2000. And we started doing energy audits and figuring out what was wrong. We were the first scientist in the home and the last one to leave the home. And everything in between was contractors, a world you and your real estate network is very familiar with. So It was energy efficiency at scale. We got up to 50 employees, did up to $5 million a year at the peak, but it was all subsidized, some portion through the utility programs, which taught me a lot about market dynamics. And it also made it very difficult to predict cash flow. And it created a lot of different creative finance strategies to get through this because we never really took on any funding. But eventually, there were some mistakes along the way that were made that could not be overcome financially. Went out of business very quickly, very efficiently. And when that happened, it was about 7 years ago, around the last week of the year, and down in a basement that was unfinished, going, am I really an entrepreneur? That's what I've been telling myself, but only because I started so young with support. But now I've got kids, and the only thing that actually had to protect me from having to go out and get a job was the bankruptcy, because the bankruptcy took like 4 months, and it wouldn't be intelligent to go make money in that period of time because it would change the dynamics of the bankruptcy. I was like, I know energy at this low level. I'm really interested at the market level. Let me go seek a mentor. So I went out and just started taking people out for coffee in my region. And I met this guy who's 15 miles down the road, like this Willy Wonka character in the energy field, which energy is boring, tweed coats, old stuffy rooms. And this guy was like not that. He was that age, but he was not that energy. He was just like creative, and he needed somebody to organize things for him. So I started doing that, and I get a call from a business partner I had on the prior side of the fence. And he's like, hey, would you be my CFO? I didn't realize how much I relied on you for financial strategy and guidance. And I'm like, sure, I could be a CFO. And I'm like, I don't know what a CFO really does. So this is 7 years ago. So I start that, scale it up to as much as I can handle heading into the pandemic. I've got 12 clients, kind of everything is fractionalized, 1 or 2 meetings a month. I'm their bookkeeper, controller, and a CFO light. And I'm like, I got 1 more slot left. And I asked myself this question my mom happened to be traveling in China. So I saw the pandemic coming. I'm like, something's about to change big time. Do I want to take on 1 more client, or do I want to try to build a system here? And I'm like, I'm going to have to turn into the teacher. So I better work on the system, not getting full capacity. So I start instigating Phil, who we had stayed in touch as friends, Phil Matthew, for the listeners out there. We went to business school together. He went the corporate track. I went the entrepreneurial track. And I had been instigating him for a couple of years. Hey, dude, you should come join me. You should come join me. And things got weird in his world around the pandemic. And he's, you know what? Let's do it. So once he came on, that is when I think we really created this CFO as a service, because he had the experience doing multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, integrations. You've worked with him at ADPI, pretty well his skill set. And it took my financial coaching and his actual financial corporate best practice chops, and we mushed them together and built systems around them that really help our clients to have foresight about what's coming, using the historical information that needs to be taken care of by bookkeepers and accountants and internally, and using that to basically tell the future and create this rolling forecast of assumptions and business insight. So I'll pause there.
No, that's intriguing. I like it. Because obviously I know what you guys do with me. How many clients do you guys have now?
We've got, all in all, we've got about 3 dozen across the 2 of us and a handful of CFOs. And then there's financial analysts that support those. Team is getting about to double digits.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So you started that, you said, about 7 years ago. Okay, awesome. As the growth was happening, like, how did you figure out because a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, as they're building all this stuff, they forget the systems that need to be implemented. And you started to think about, okay, no, I need to put a system in, rather than, because it's always just drive. I need to drive more revenue. And you said to yourself, no, I need to pause and take some systems. How did you know that was the time to build the systems out? You've applied it, but I want to dig down a little bit deeper, that this was the time to build systems out. And where did you get to steal your vernacular a minute ago? Where did you get the chops to start to really know how to build these systems inside of this college?
Okay. There was a couple things I took with me through the bankruptcy fire. And one of them was every digital document from the company before, because the bank did not want this in Google Docs. And so the one thing I was like, I'm going to pay for on the other side of this is the $30 a year to keep this alive. So I have everything we did. So I had a lot of templates to work off of. And we had a 50-person company on the other side. So like we had good systematic thinkers, and my dad had taught me to be a systematic thinker. So I had a experience doing that, but I think with regards to the timing and like why now, I just had this sense
that the world was going to change, that people were going to provide more grace and flexibility, and that I was probably over delivering for my initial set of clients, including driving to their homes or businesses. I knew that was going to stop for at least a while. And I had been doing these time audits quarterly to figure out where my time went. And I was like, oh, look at this. I got 10 hours a week. What do I want to do with it? More than that I was going to be getting, but I'm like, I got to give this to the kids to teach them. I got these other 10 hours. What do I want to do with it? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I have a process in my brain / gut for sensing that there's a big left or right decision coming. We've talked about a couple of those through the upbringing, and I just feeling like, okay, another one's coming. Wait for it. Okay, let's go this way. That's the answer. And so that was the catalyst for it. And maybe it was partially because Phil and I are having these conversations, and I'm like, I got to get ready to show him what I'm doing. Instead of just, I don't know, why don't you follow me in my Zoom calls?
Yeah, because the systemization is unbelievably important, and like making sure that all of that's nailed down. Do you use, so like we use EOS in our company. Do you use anything? I think you use some bits of EOS, but what kind of systems did you build? Were they all internal? Did you find, or not internal, but all borderline like proprietary things that you just built? Or did you take an already built system and start to apply it into your business?
I was given Traction, the book, EOS related, before I read that the last couple weeks of 2019, I think. So I was thinking in that direction. I hadn't seen it framed that way. We had been doing something similar, but not as efficient. And then I had always learned, if you don't have a system, just put it in Excel and the system will come from that, right? Just document it somewhere. What you're doing is some sort of order, and then you can build a system from that outline, that route. And now we've got Monday.com driving everything. We've got a solution called Giraffe that drives our rolling forecast process. But each one of those ended up being an investment of both capital and a lot of time to set up and structure and customize. So in the beginning, it was really much more of Google Docs and just writing down processes and beating them up back and forth, and late nights with Phil being like, hey, I did it this way. I record your Zooms. I don't need to sit on with you, but record them. I want to watch them because I want to see how you operate. And we realized we are doing this totally different and getting different results. Like, I'm doing much more of a coaching, psychological improvement process, and he's doing much more of a metric-based financial process. But what if we were to do these two things together? What would that look like? And I think that's kind of our special sauce at Sustain CFO, that it is, we're not going to be for everybody, but for the folks that join forces, like, it can keep you on this sustainable path of growth towards your North Star that we figured out from the beginning, as long as the accountability is there and the client fit occurs.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. I am super excited to talk to Eric Beach today. I want to go down into your businesses a bit. You have My Modern Myth and Project Echelon. Let's go into depth about both of those.
Yeah, so Project Echelon I didn't mention, but the whole thing about that is in 2014 we started as a buddy, a veteran and civilian. I was, like I had said, on that suicidal path. And that was when I promised my wife I would change my life. And so I started to, and got into triathlon because that was something I was always curious about. And I was like, oh, I can't go in the military, but I always want to. As we talked about, it's that identity thing. So I can't go in the military. So what do I like about it? What do I miss? Because I don't really miss the military. I don't miss 4 o'clock formations and the random raking of rocks and whatever, patrolling cigarette butts. But I miss the physicality. I miss the challenge. I miss the clear task, clear goal, clear win. And so what can I do? I can get into fitness. I'm not really happy with what's happening with my body anyway. And so I started to do triathlon, but I didn't know anything about it. And my wife's high school friend, her husband is a professional cyclist. So my wife said, hey, give Eric a call and see if he can help you. And so he absolutely did. He loves veterans. His sister is an Apache pilot, so very connected to the military. And so he helped me get ready for my first sprint triathlon. And I always like to tell the story. His first call with me was, all right, so how long have you been running? It's been 13 years. Okay, it's a bit of time, but you can swim. No, I've never actually swam more than like a doggy paddle or floating around in the water. Okay. What bike are you riding? I don't have don't have a bike. And then he goes, we're off to a really great start. And so that was the start of it, is he helped me find a bike. He helped me get some training plans. He gave me direction, completed it, felt really great because on that path, I learned things about myself through sport. And that became the next evolution of my thinking of mind, body story and saying, holy crap, like I start realizing I quit when I run up this hill at 90% of the way up. Why? Because it's just 10% more and I just don't have what it takes to go that extra 10%. And I'm like, wonder if I do that in life too, because I felt like I was a quitter. And then I realized it was the last 10% is when I quit everything. And it's the tedium, it's the finishing touches. I want to go into the next big thing, the next big adventure. And so I was like, damn it. Okay, what if I finish up this hill? Then I did. I finished going up that hill. And I was like, okay, if I can finish it on a run, then I bet I can finish it on this college report or whatever I'm doing. And sure enough, I could. And so fitness became this tool to see where my deficiencies lied in life, because how we do one thing, we do all things, that whole idea. And so I started to refine myself, and Eric saw that. And he said, hey, that worked pretty good for you, huh? I was like, yeah, it did. Hey, would you like to start a nonprofit? I said, absolutely. Let's help veterans do this too. And so Project Echelon, we set out to help people educate, equip, and empower them, veterans, through physical activity, endurance sport, and self-discovery. And so now we've been at it for, what would that be, a decade now? Nice. And have helped hundreds and hundreds of veterans. Our team is now international, and it's been amazing. And it's one of those things that I've had to learn about myself as a visionary versus an integrator. Eric Hill he's the executive director. And as he said, I'm the angel on his shoulder that tells him, what would Eric do in this situation? What would I do in this situation? Because I give him that spirit, he says. I give him the passion, and I had to accept that my role wasn't a day-to-day guy in this arena. It was, let me inspire the day-to-day guys. Let me give them the mission and the values, and then empower them with it to go. It was the acceptance of who I am and how I serve this organization, and to stop being everything to everyone. Because in my film career, I tried to do it all. I was the editor, the graphic designer, the filmmaker, the DP, the actor. I tried to do everything, and it was hard. People called me a virtuoso, but I was miserable. But I appreciated the compliment, so I chased it. But that has grown, and partly that was hard for me because I wasn't an elite athlete, and I wasn't as involved as I felt like I needed to be, even though I realized it was just, dude, you got to accept your role in this. And you have to get the evidence that shows how valued you are. Bro, you're not an accountant. You don't know numbers. You get into the board meetings and they start pulling up the financial sheets, and I'm like, oh my God, what is any of this? I don't understand. Let me talk about feelings and inspiration and motivation and the grand vision of where we can go and how we can get there. And so that's wonderful. And My Modern Myth is my outlet that I've realized is I tried to bring that into Project Echelon, and that's not the venue. We built for 6 years, and then I'm going to pivot finally because I've created a product. No, not the place for it. So I've taken that and separated it, gotten into jiu-jitsu because triathlon wasn't for me anymore, but I love fighting. And so that's my way to move my body, because you always have to have it. And My Modern Myth was that battle of, okay, if I'm all heady, I'm reading all of the books, why am I miserable? When was the last time you exercised? When have you moved besides from the bed to the shower to your chair downstairs to read? It's been a while. Imagine that, man. Yeah. Oh man, you've been training every day, but you haven't read a book. You haven't worked on writing. You haven't done any of your self-reflection stuff. And now you missed one day of class and you're depressed. So why is that? You haven't been doing anything mental, have you? So there's always a imbalance. Yeah. And so My Modern Myth began that process of me telling myself, how do I find that balance? How do I assess the story I'm telling myself in that day? How do I give myself space to have those really brutal conversations just to get them out in the open so I can dissect them and tell myself a better story and charge into the next day with more positivity and empowerment? Because I think you always get to choose disempowered or empowered paths at any moment when we have this decision tree. And so once I got to a point where I had that figured out, this last year or two is when I officially launched. And now I help other people do that. because if it helps me, it's going to help somebody.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're doing webinars and individual coaching right now. I'm writing a book and I'm writing some ebooks to supplement that. So we're going to have more structure in it because I haven't been as structured as I need to be and as focused on it because of the other things that I was building. But I've decided
It's hard to do.
there's some connection there. My wife will joke with me and say, wait, we'll have one conversation and she'll see my eyes go, hmm? And she goes, you just created a business, didn't you?
Yeah, I tend to do that an awful lot, but then the logic side of my brain comes in and is, no, you idiot, you don't have enough time for everything else already, right? So
Beautiful.
that's where I get to, I don't know if balance is even the right word for that. I have an ability to slap those things away. And in my role with our education company is I'm the integrator opposite of my visionary. And every time Markian comes up with an idea, I'm like, dude, stop. Do not open your mouth in front of other people. Only open your mouth in front of me. That's it. You're not allowed to tell anybody else about your great ideas because then people are going to want to chase these things or do something, and we got to stop. But it's great though, because I think that having those ideas and having that stuff bounce around is awesome, and it leads to things like My Modern Myth and Project Echelon. Because if it was just somebody like me, those things would get created. I love the fact that you're out there doing the opposite brained side of me and chasing these things down to be able to give back to people and be able to affect change in people's lives.
One thing I guess I'd ask you, because this is where I'm at with my business, is I need integration. I need an integrator. So I don't know where your strengths lie in that conversation, but how much do you think there's a priority on solidifying a brand from colors to verbiage to presentation to having books, having pamphlets, having classes, having all of these things figured out versus just going forward and putting out a message and trying to build that way? I'm just curious from your perspective, what you've seen works or holds you back from making progress based on overthinking the brand or underthinking it.
So based on what you're saying, it sounds like you're already going down the route of creating all these things and trying to get all this stuff created beforehand. And I would say that you definitely need to push out the information first, right? As it's coming, not necessarily first, but people have to know you could build it, because what's going to happen is you're likely to keep going down that path and say, yeah, I still need this one more product or this one more thing. I've got this other idea that just came up, which is why you need that integrator in there to say, no, like these 4 things are already ready. Let's push them out and get them going while we're growing the other stuff in the background, while all your ideas are flowing. That we need, like, operations need to happen in order to be an actual functional business. So let's let the operations go. Let your ideas keep flowing. Let your creative juices keep going, but let somebody else run the operation side of the house so that things can actually go out and emails can be sent and products can be pushed out and products can be finalized. Because that's another thing that maybe not you, but a lot of visionaries tend to have is it's got to be perfect before it gets sent out. And sometimes that's just not true at all. Like that 80% solution just needs to be done. Let's just get it out to make sure that people can get it. And then we'll improve it as we keep going. So I'd say find somebody who you definitely align with well, that has more of those opposite characteristics of you to help push all of that stuff out, and do it sooner rather than later, because they're going to, hopefully, if you guys have had the right conversations and you guys, especially if you're using EOS itself, as we're using visionary and integrator words, if you're using EOS, the system to create all of this stuff, you guys will be in line with the outcome of the company. You guys will be in line with your core focus. You'll be in line with your core values of the company. And if you guys are in line with those things, then that integrator is going to be helping you execute these things to make sure that they're out there in the ether so people keep growing while you're creating all of those ideas and going through. So I'd say jump on it, date the person before you get married to them, make sure you do align with all of those things, core values, you understand what they're doing, you understand who they are before you go and bring them onto the team. I don't know if that actually answers the question, but
that does, because I get stuck in, I need the logo to be perfect.
Yeah.
It has to be just this powerful image, and the colors, I'm like, God, that might be the wrong shade. And so you're dealing with hex codes and stuff. And I know in my mind that it's not what's going to make people hear the message, but I'm so connected to it that I think the integrator part, I have so little of it. I can create and write. Like, I love writing, I love speaking, but the strategizing of what to release first, how to build a framework that's more cohesive, more following versus free form conversation, which is my favorite thing. It's realizing, I do need a partner to bring in. So I'm gonna start dating.
Yes, as you should.
Yes,
as you should. It's a tough balance, right? Because you to go to what you were saying, we've got two people on our team, like the visionary very much cares about the pixels, like what exact shade are we using? Where's this stuff at? And then our marketing guy, same thing. So like our marketing guy was complaining about the way some slide looked on something and then sent it over to Marky on the visionary. And I'm on the thread and I'm looking at it and I was like, I literally can't tell which one's the good one and which one's the bad one. I have no idea which one you guys were even complaining about. Because it wasn't a context. It was just, look at these things. One of these is horrendous. It should be looking more like the other one. And I was like, I don't know which one's horrendous and which one it should be. I don't understand because I just couldn't see that. It didn't make any sense. And I was like, I think I'm like probably 70% of the people out there. They're not going to care.
Mhm.
They just want the product. They just want you to change their life. And changing their life does not mean that this is the perfect right shade of orange or the perfect right shade. Like that's not going to change their life. What? I'm sorry, Eric, but it's true. It's true. Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I have Anthony Vigilante with me. I'm really looking forward to chat with him. Tell us a bit about your business.
Yeah. So actually, 2023 was a big year for me, a transitional year.
Mm-hmm.
I was a chief technology officer, chief information security officer for a financial company for the last 24 years in Midtown Manhattan, which was great. A lot of fun, learned a lot. Very exciting to be in technology, cybersecurity, finance, for sure. But I felt it was time to make a change in my life. I've always been an entrepreneur, an investor, my basically entire life, definitely at least for 20 plus years. And so I've done that in parallel, more passive, of course, because my day job was very time consuming and intensive, as you can imagine. But I'd like to do more, get more involved in that, which I have been. So I decided this year to transition to focus more on real estate investing, business, and wean off of a W-2. Though I continue to be involved in technology and cybersecurity and management leadership from a advisory consultant perspective. So I've been helping out small, medium-sized companies, working on their challenges and obstacles from a technology, cybersecurity, and management perspective, because obviously management, having good people, managing good people, building good, successful teams is the key to any business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been my transition and what I've been focusing on in 2023 and continue to build that in 2024. I've been working with a lot of small, especially small, medium-sized businesses, helping them leadership, management, helping them build teams, helping them with their technology, cybersecurity hurdles, trying to migrate to the cloud. Oh, how do I protect it from all the cybersecurity crap going on? So that's been a lot of fun. And that's basically between that and doing real estate. I do hard money lending. I do a lot of different things like that. So also if anyone is interested in or need hard money lending, I'm been very active in that space. Yeah, I'm here to help. I'm always here to have a conversation with anyone interested to talk about fatherhood or talk about investing or IT. Those are things that are fun. And actually management. I did a really fun podcast on management a few months ago. And that's definitely a topic I love talking about and love helping people with through those hurdles. Because that's really probably, as we all know, you can't have a successful business without having successful employees or a team. So,
Yep. Awesome. No, I really love that a lot. I think the team building side of the house is, man, if you have the wrong team member on board, it can make your world a whole lot worse. So make sure that you're managing those teams well and running through. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am very excited to have a conversation with Aaron Amuchastegui.
I've been a parent for a long time. I've got to see all sorts of different trials and tribulations through that. And all while when I first became a parent, I was working for somebody else. And then I went broke when the housing market crashed. And then I became an entrepreneur when my second baby was born. I remember staring at her in the NICU, the oxygen mask. And it was this moment of, I need to quit my job and go start my own business. I'm like, take it in my hands. So business dad, like there were so many parts about being a dad that became my entrepreneur journey and then of growth. So I live in Austin, Texas. I have a bunch of real estate companies and software companies that are related to real estate. Real estate's been that thing that helped me do some of the others. And we'll see where this goes today. When my daughter got sick a couple of years ago and she needed this kind of crazy treatment that insurance didn't cover, It was this moment of you go, oh, this is why I was an entrepreneur. This is why I built wealth. This is why I ran my own businesses. And at the same time, being grateful that it didn't happen 7 years ago or 12 years ago, or any of those other times when I was at zero at the bottom dip of my entrepreneur journey.
Let's go a little bit more in depth. You've flipped like over 1,000 houses and done all sort, like a bunch of different real estate transactions. So let's go through what you're doing right now and how you got to why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So 2009, housing market crashed and went from making a bunch of money to not. And was trying business after business. And you go, what are my skills that can be applied and used somewhere else? We were trying to buy foreclosures at the time that were on the MLS. We drive by them and go, this one just needs paint and concrete and they're selling it for $250,000. And last year, this was a $500,000 house. We should be able to fix it and sell it. We found out later the reason our offers were never getting accepted is because those listing agents were hand feeding them to like special people. Didn't matter how early, how high, anything. We just couldn't get an offer accepted. I discovered courthouse step foreclosures. Invented an industry with that. When I went to my first auction, there was 2 or 3 other people bidding on 300 houses and they were small time. And I remember first seeing that and going, wow, this can be huge. My first once in a lifetime opportunity. This can be huge. And no one was doing it at scale. No one was doing it like running it like a home builder. And my dad was my first investor and in the first deal for free and it worked out. And he told a buddy, that buddy told another buddy. People started asking me. I went and presented in front of a group. Ended up raising a big fund and running my little house flipping company like a home builder. And we were the biggest buyers in Northern California and bought 1,000 houses on the courthouse steps over the next couple of years, delivered millions and millions of investor profit to people. Did really good. Blackstone came into that market in like 2012. Everybody's heard about, that kind of move now. 2012, 2013 to start buying houses for long-term holds. They told me they would put me out of business if I didn't join them. I didn't Google who Blackstone was. I was too young and too cocky. I didn't have a mastermind teaching me how to invest long-term or save or what to do. I tell everybody if I'd had GoBundance in 2010, I'd be a billionaire today because I was printing money and just wasting it because I was just a young, dumb kid that thought it was special. So 2012, 2013, all of a sudden I'm broke. They put me out of business. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, hustling, doing construction work, applying to be an Uber driver, doing a flip here and there. I discover I somehow ended up at an auction out in Texas to buy an apartment complex with the line of credit that the bank let me keep from my dad after he passed away because they felt bad for me. And apartment comes to bid, going once, going twice, sold. I don't bid on it. I'm scared. I hadn't been good at something in a couple of years, and I was like, what if I forgot? What if I'm getting something wrong? I can't afford to lose right now. I already lost it all. And I remember sitting there being all sad, and then another auctioneer shows up and starts selling houses. And nobody's there. And I was like, this is like California 2009. There's no competition. There's nobody out here with skills and houses are selling hand over fist for 50, 60, 70,000. I could not believe it. I flew out the next month and started buying. And I said, this time I'll be buying for long-term holds instead. I remember thinking after I flipped 1,000 houses and went broke, if I'd have just kept 100 houses, I'd have been set for life. So this time I said, I'm going to keep them. I'd buy 10 houses and I'd flip 1 or 2 to pay bills and get down payments. I would keep the rest. Did that from 2015 to 2020. When 2020 hit, I had about 500 houses with different levels of investors and loans and things like that of people that owned them. I didn't own them outright. And some of them I owned just me with loans. Some of them I owned outright. A lot of them I owned with investors. And then the market, doubled and tripled. I remember thinking like, I'm going to go to Texas because prices will never go up out there. In 2017, I bought a software company that I was essentially buying the leads from. So I was buying the foreclosure leads from a company in Texas. I remember when I got put out of business in California and there were like 300 people at auction bidding on the same 3 houses. I thought the guy that's winning is the guy selling them the list. The guy that owns a company called Foreclosure Radar. And so when I got to Texas and I saw the other company, I had some forethought to say, you know what, I'm going to buy that company because someday there's going to be hundreds of people at auction. I'm not going to be able to beat them at auction anymore. And I'm going to be selling them the widget. I'm going to be selling them the picks and shovels. I'm going to be selling them the list. So my last couple of years, my shift has been to, I still buy real estate. I still own real estate. I have 800 houses. I've got a couple apartment complexes. I've got some developments that I've been working on, some big developments. But I've been focusing most of my efforts on my masterminds of trying to take people that are already flipping a lot of houses and like getting them to the next level. We call it my inner circle stuff. On my Real Estate Rockstars podcast, I've been focusing on. And our biggest push lately is this new software that I built for myself for many years. And we started selling it to other people 3 or 4 months ago called PropHawk. And that's been the most exciting thing, to take this product that's here's we're using AI to go, here's 300 people that are likely to default in the next little while. Let's skip trace their phone number. Let's text them and call them inside the app. And within minutes, you're having conversations with people. And you're getting people to go, yeah, I need you to help me sell my house. Like within minutes, it's wild. I think we're state of the art, industry leading technology, and we're updating it every day. Like, so right now I'm spending most of my days like building product, like testing out the product, making changes. Like, how can we make this a little bit better? So that was the journey of, first it was buying and flipping houses, and then graduating to flipping as many as I needed, but like long-term gratification of like holding as many as rentals as I could. Like my youngest daughter, like she'll buy the rental and keep the rent instead of doing that now. And then expanding into other businesses. And it was like expanding into multifamily or expanding into storage units, and then into like the operating companies of owning the rentals, or the operating companies like the software companies and things like that. But my most exciting thing that I work on day to day is the software. Managing rentals isn't fun. My team does that. Yep. And managing employees isn't necessarily fun. It's probably the most stressful, the most difficult thing I do. You can't get anywhere. You can't grow something giant without them, but their well-being is in your hands, and it is a stressful balance. And because people are imperfect too. So yeah, that's what I'm working on today and how I got here. I had a crazy journey. In 2021, being in Texas felt like it was my second once in a lifetime opportunity. I learned the stuff that Blackstone taught me, and I bought a ton of houses.
Yeah.
I saw the market was changing, did really well. But I think real estate is an avenue for everybody. Right now it's a very different market, frankly. And so it's a lot different business plans that people will be following, and it won't be quite as easy as it was. Just like buying foreclosures on the courthouse steps, it's a process that's very simple, but it's a lot of work. So not a lot of people do it. But I tell people, like, be grateful it's hard, because then you'll have less competition. If the market gets tougher, you should have less competition.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I'm really excited to talk to Steve.
I met with a guy who was really super nice individual from my hometown area, who had done really well for himself in the stock market. Pestered him about being an investor to help us go buy real estate. And he's, I only know stocks, and I lost a bunch of money recently, and I think real estate's bad. And I let one guy's opinion, no was enough, and I just didn't do it. And then the construction company ended their stuff. And so then I met my current partner. And at the time, he was starting a new division at a construction company. It felt entrepreneurial because it was originally a business within a business. Fortunately, that didn't work out long term. They rolled it up as a division and never gave us the opportunity to start our own company. But it was a great experience. My partner, Pat, was the best boss I'd ever had. We treated it like our own business, hiring, interviewing, and growing our company. We had the back end accounting and all that stuff of a large company, but we were able to grow that from, I think the first year we did maybe $1 million or $2 million in construction. And by the time we were done, we were doing $100 million a year. Company grew from $300 million a year to almost $1 billion a year. We were part of that in helping that company grow, not all of it, but it was good. With that, though, we saw a lot of kind of the corporate world, and saw the founder of that company leave, the namesake leave, and management take over. And we didn't all necessarily see eye to eye with how they wanted to do things. So that's what led to Redwood starting. My boss at the time, he left when they started to shut down the healthcare group. And then he started Redwood. The office was 5 minutes from where my kids play hockey. So he told me, come by the office someday. And so we had a meeting, and he's like, if you ever want to leave, including the company I was at, if you ever want to leave, I'm here. And sure, 2 months later, I'm sitting in his office going, hey, let's do this. It all worked out. But in the interim of that, probably my first real entrepreneurial effort was I had a couple buddies from college. So right around the time that I got the job, around 2010, they had started a company in 2009 called Payline Data, completely unrelated to my education or career. They did credit card processing sales, typical merchant services, hire independent agents, go door to door, those credit card machines. Somebody behind that services that. And they're basically like an independent agent that represents a company that does the processing agreements on the back end. So that's what we were when I joined. I had dabbled in internet and stuff and light coding. I'm not a software guy, but I understand it enough. So I took that company and said, hey, let's go online. Let's try to diversify. So eventually worked myself to a leadership position and a part owner of that company. Led the charge in trying to grow online. I had one of the best business partners, the best negotiator I've ever met in my entire life. So that helped us get really good deals that most of our competitors were not able to negotiate.
And then I had one of my wife's cousins came and worked with us, and he was a great asset and understood the product side of things and technology. We all worked together and grew that company. And I was able to do that. My current partner and boss at the time, I was pretty open with him that I was working on that when I joined him at the previous construction company.
A replay of the last one.
Yeah, exactly. So I was doing both. He was supportive. Some leadership didn't like it, but I had started with Payline before Calhoun. It was on my LinkedIn and everything.
Yeah.
I think upper management ever liked it. My boss never really cared because he'd get my emails at 2:00 in the morning knowing I was getting my stuff.
Yeah.
But that's where I cut my teeth as an entrepreneur, focusing on culture, building a culture first, the whole start with why and get people motivated. We had a really cool program where we gave back 10% of our profits. That attracted a lot of people, attracted some customers, but it attracted more quality, talented individuals and people would want to work for the reason that the impact we were making. So it was great. Around 2015, 16, we started to raise money to grow the business. It was getting to the point where I was soon going to have to make the decision of, okay, do I go full-time with Payline and leave the construction career, or what's the path? And as we were raising money, we raised a little bit of private debt, and then we were looking to raise a bigger round. And we had an experienced entrepreneur who had sold his previous business, came in as an investor, and ended up at some point just deciding he was going to buy the company. So he bought Payline. So I think we sold in 2017, if I remember correctly. And that was interesting, deciding how to sell, doing the valuation, and really all the underwriting that went with that. I really struggled with what was going to happen with the construction company. Do I think about startups, leave construction still and go the startup route, or do I just devote all the construction and leave that behind? And it took about a year of back and forth. Life has a funny way of working itself out. Over those years, I saw the writing on the wall that they weren't going to move forward with the healthcare division at the current company and what the leadership changed. So we had already, my partner had said, hey, if we decide to leave, let's go do our own thing. It wasn't like a surprise when I joined them. They forced that a little bit on us. The funny part about private equity is they can pay a lot of money for your business. The bad part is they don't care about the culture and the employees. The one downside, if I had any regrets of watching that, was watching them dismantle what was almost 50 employees in Chicago. One of the pictures was the office we built out. My construction company got to build out the office for my side business, which was really cool. Watching that office close, go to sublease, and everybody getting moved or let go from the company was the one thing I struggled with the most in that acquisition. Understanding the overall business divide, they understand numbers. We had a ton of leads coming in online through SEO. They realized quick they were not equipped. They were a buy and build type acquisition company, just acquiring more accounts. So they came back and offered to license the website and name back to us if we would invest in the personnel to start up the business again. We had an opportunity within a year of selling. We relicensed and invested as equal partners to start this new company. That was a nice horizontal income, passive investment for me over the last 4 or 5 years. We had a good opportunity to exit that last year. I think done and sold. The company that finally sold too. So that all is finally closed, sealed, and done behind us. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So that's led me to the current position. Now I'm looking at only vertical income. So where am I investing my time, efforts, and money? Industrial real estate was always attractive. We've done a lot of work for other owner operators that have bought buildings that we've renovated and brought up to spec and improved. And so we started having the concept that we could do that for other previous clients. If they wanted to expand, maybe we could be partners with them. And that evolved into this new business concept that I have where I look back and said, okay, I have experience in branding. I have experience in online B2B business. I understand the operations of real estate. The good part about leasing in industrial is it's easier than leasing in multifamily. So you could potentially manage those properties a little easier yourself. We're working on a business plan for acquiring industrial assets or developing them. Some might be adaptive reuse, or from a standpoint of what can we do with the current business. If we moved them out and maybe subdivided a large single tenant building into micro tenants. So either doing like micro tenant leasing in the industrial space where you have a shared loading dock you share between smaller tenants, doing the small bay individual demised small bay flex as well, building the suit in a development site taking a strip building that's rented now, that's all individual tenants, and we're ending it under one building under this business entity and subleasing each different model where you're not looking for individual triple net leases, just a gross lease on all those. And then us as a business is signed triple net lease with the owners of the building directly. Hopefully we're on the owner side too. So that's kind of circular business.
There seems to always be in both of our lives a little bit of a taste of we're just not quite satisfied with what we've got. Like there's something more that I'm looking for. Now it seems that you found your way. Operating a business, wanting to start more businesses, you're like, no, this is what I was missing. Like I wasn't able to control the things that I wanted to build and the things I wanted to do. And I want to toss that over to you for a second and see if that seems accurate to you or if you think there's some other theme at play there.
You're a good host because you're nailing it. I really just had this revelation recently as any business, right, could be taxing and there's issues and there's growing pains. It's funny. It's like a real estate or a construction business versus a software business. They're very different, but a lot of the things are the same. I found is like the system side of things to grow. That's my weak point, right? I need the integrator. I need help with that. So we hired a business coach to help my partners and I on the construction side to implementing their systems. This year we'll be growing that. We actually made a key hire recently to be the office executive to help us lay the groundwork and build out our standard operating procedures. As I'm going through that, I started thinking, why is my mind going to starting this other business? Why do I keep thinking about starting another business? I should not be doing that with everything going on and the challenges we have with the other business. I found that both challenging. Should I be doing it? If I don't do it, am I going to regret it? Because it goes back to the real estate side. When I look way back in 2010, if I had followed my instincts, I'd be better off financially. And now everything worked out. The Calhoun talk work landed in my lap and I made the best of that, but maybe I could have done both. But I don't think my wife would have liked that. The timing was right. The visionary side of me drives that. You're probably similar. A lot of guys in components are. I found that a lot of visionary-esque people. So I'm wrestling with, does it make sense to think about trying to start something new and growing something new until I have the animal that is the construction business squared away? It's a catch-22, right? On one side, it's okay, yeah, I should just focus all my efforts on everything that needs to be fixed over here on the construction business and put these ideas on the burner. Whereas the other side of me is, if I fix everything on the construction business and then it's running, then what do I do? If I start planting the seed now, it's not going to take off. I'm not going to be hiring employees anytime. But if I could get it to where by the end of the year, it's revenue generating and could justify investing in an employee to help run it, or it gets to the point where we could raise money to grow the business, then the construction company could keep going and I could have the next stepping stone. I get excited about that. Driving to a job site, the kids are all asleep, and that's where my mind goes. Like I start thinking about what's the brand name? What's the name of this business going to be? What is the, what's the logo going to look like? How do I market it? Like that's the stuff that I get jazzed up about. And so I've decided very recently, in fact, in the last week, I need to figure out how do I harness that? And then how do I hire the other components of what we're trying to do? How can I hire more to help with construction? And the hard part's going to be that might take some sacrifice, either deferring, taking a bonus here or there, or deferring a raise for myself, maybe staying under market for what I'm paying myself in the construction business so I can have the time to go over here. And that honestly is the hardest thing. For me personally, if I didn't have a family, that would be a no-brainer decision. But having the responsibilities of a family, and my wife does still work. She's blessed to work remote with the company she's at. I'd like to get to a point where she doesn't have to work. If they eliminate her position, I don't want her to go through finding a new job. I want her to focus on the family and enjoy the time. But it's a struggle because there's the financial aspect of, okay, if I do this, I'm either having to invest time. It's an investment of money potentially, and more importantly, probably time. And how do I avoid taking away any time? My oldest is a freshman in high school, the youngest in 6th grade. So I got essentially 6 years from now until when maybe they're both off, you're sending them off to college. Sometimes you're on a different page than your significant other.
Yeah.
I always wrestled with that. I thought that was a bad thing. if we want different things, right? And I try to convince myself, oh no, we want the same thing. We want purity and time with our family. And at the end of the day, we do, but I think we want different means to get there. That's a hard one. That's what I get hung up on, because I want to do all these things. By doing that, am I taking away? I recently started Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time. And I'm in the middle of that one right now. And that's been pretty eye-opening. And I think what's exciting about it, and when I say it's eye-opening, is it started to make me think about, okay, actually, I might be able to do this, but I don't have to do everything, right? I might have to figure out this is the way we should do things, but then I can assemble a team that can go do those things for me. And the one thing he says multiple times in the book is 80% done or 80% good for somebody else doing it is 100% excellent for you. Or I screwed up the way he termed it. If you're doing things 100%, you're limited, right? You can only do certain things, whereas you can hire out people to do it 80% as well as you could. That's 100% great for you because you bought back 100% of that time. So that's changed the approach. It's starting to change how I'm thinking about doing some of these things. So instead of me thinking about how do I go start this business, I've started to think, okay, how do I lay the groundwork for this business? And then the who, not how concept, who could I bring in that could help me execute on that? I've started networking with some great GoBundance guys, even some guys locally. And we've started talking about doing some of the groundwork of finding properties to pilot this. Maybe even before I started reading that book, I started to do that component of it. And now it's, okay, operationally, who's the right person? Maybe I find somebody in GoBundance Emerge or somebody in my local network that is me from 10 years ago, right? They're young, just started a family. But it's actually, I found it was a lot easier when the kids were little to be a workaholic because you got babysitters or whatnot. We were lucky to have in-laws that my in-laws took care of a lot. Now that my kids are older and travel, it's insane. It's 5 nights a week, 4 or 5 p.m. I got to be out of the office, pick them up and drive them. Last summer, between a family vacation and 2 trips for travel hockey, I think I was in the office 3 days in 6 weeks over a pretty busy period. It was impressive. My partners did so well, kept it together and did an amazing job letting me get away. Part of it was a cruise in a different country. I couldn't connect if I wanted to. Having the right people, the right partners, I put a lot of stress on him and I probably owe him for that. You got to do it when you can enjoy the time with the kids. That work-life balance is never in balance. I don't think it ever will be. I think anybody that achieves true work-life balance that's a unicorn to me. Like I always feel like the pendulum's swinging one way or the other, right? I'm either spending too much time at work because I'm trying to find new work or I'm trying to start this new business, or I'm swinging this way where I'm spending a lot of time with family and things are not quite working the way I want on the business. Where, bring it full circle, where I'm trying to get on the same page with my wife is, okay, I know she thinks I want all this. I want to be all business all the time, striving, and a little bit of it's money, right? Anybody that says it's not is crazy, in my opinion. Like, it's always driven, like and it's not the only reason. I also really enjoy building a team and creating something. And that gives me that creative juices of like building something that doesnn't exist. And then I know she wants me just right now, like just focus and be home every minute that you can be home. And I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit scared that I would be bored if I was doing that. Or I'd feel like I'm missing out. So I think what I've started to determine in reading the books and thinking about the who, not how, or the buy back your time is, all right, I'm going to swing to starting to do business, but I'm going to find the right people to help me do it so that I can still balance towards spending that time with my kids, especially for these next 6 years, because I had kids pretty young. I wasn't quite an entrepreneur when I had the kids, right? We just dove right into having kids. And I hear a lot of guys that even on your podcast, I'm like, man, these guys are like ahead because they've thought about work-life balance. Yeah. I don't remember the guest you had on. They were talking about the family board meeting, organizing yourself. I'm like, I almost feel like it's too late because 14-year-old and 11-year-old, like I could probably still force it.
Never too late.
Maybe not, but it feels late. If he started that concept when the kids were younger, it would have been easier.